Bobby Creighton,
Here.
Bill Shifino,
Here.
Ashley Morrow. Here. Rebecca Kirk. Here. Alan Cohen,
Here.
Kathleen Shanahan. Ron Cristaldi,
Here.
Sue Carlton. Here. Elson Hewitt. Yes, there's Kathleen.
Kathleen is walking in.
Yes.
Today, so we give her a yes.
All right, she's it. Sit here. Kathleen Shanahan. Here.
Thanks.
The parking thing's not working out there, so.
So then we'll go to public comment. Anybody have public comment? Right, seeing none. I would like to entertain a motion to approve prior meeting minutes from May 26, 2026.
The improvements. In the new business, it said, if your regular was missed the early building, but that's the. They don't care about it. Okay.
Make a motion.
Even you go further.
Yes. Mr. Moving properly seconded, all in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. You have to approve as amended.
Yep.
So we're moving on next to the potential Tampa City charter amendments.
We're gonna thank you. Thank you. I'm going to. Or. You know, I was in Italy at midnight during the study reserves. My credit for doing that, so thank you, Bill. I wanted to recap our progress. And talk about our planning for today, so we made good progress, we completed our review of articles. Excuse me, we need to get out, so I didn't know she was trying. 1 minute. I'm just trying to go through.
Okay.
We had two sections requiring charter changes, which Mr. Chamber has done, and I'm going to show to you for your approval like we did in the past. We're going to move into Articles 10 and 11, in addition to the actual content of these. I'm going to take Bobby for questions that I shared with everyone. And that are available for us to discuss, so that get the ball rolling. I'm allowing the new business discussion items. What I've done here, if we can get to it, is I've mapped all the public comments in the back of our tracking document in a way that ties into things we've already discussed, or if it's a new topic, bringing it back to you for discussion because it wasn't in the charter, so we didn't expressly cover it. And then there are a few items on one slide around things some of you have said I want to talk about with the group later. So we'll see if we get there, but we're prepared to if we do so. So for now, what I'd like to do is move directly into 6.03 and 9.02. 6.03 is the.
Allison's here.
Yeah, she's on my. So you remember after some significant conversation last meeting. We ended up as a group deciding to amend this section. And Ron, you pointed out precisely what that meant, and Ken's translated that into changes of really switching words around, right? Because we moved back to the mayor appointing and not nominating, and the council confirming not appointing. I got that right. Say it the second time, I'll get it wrong, but for now, I think you got it right. So once we approve this language, and then we'll go to 9, which is a very simple one, we're really done with 1 through 9 in case. Of course, we can revisit in terms of our plan. So can everyone, you might have looked at it already, but I want to ask if this needs to be everyone's approval.
Make a motion, we approve 6.03 amendments as presented.
Second. So, moving properly seconded, all in favor say aye. Those say nay.
Nay.
Alright. What do I say next?
Well, I think you can register.
Motion by-
Motion passed.
Motion passes, okay. Thank you.
So this is straightforward, but it would still be a change to the language by which we are removing the text provide refer to the building inspector shall have this year the director of the request before. We confirm that this doesn't exist any longer, hence the deletion. So I'll put that to the group as well, if someone wants to know what to accept.
I should accept the change to 02 as per that page.
Second.
Then moved and properly seconded, all in favor say aye,
Aye.
any opposed say nay. That motion passes.
Great. I talked about this, but I'm gonna go back, because we're not gonna jump to public comment unless we have time. I need to switch the screen and we'll jump into get the questions. Well, we'll look at it in general, and get the questions that Bobby's presented there with me just a second. All right, no, I got a movie buddy, you don't know, really, I don't feel a thing. That. Spot. Thank you over here. If you can't hear us, please jump in. I think you can, but if you can't, say something. So. Here we are on section 10. And what I'd like to do is. The fairly long section, I'm not gonna read all of it. Continues on. But what we have here are a number of things that Bobby asked us to discuss. I'm going to summarize them. Some of these I know Ken will also look into, provide some guidance. And then we'll start the conversation like we always do. So on cycle versus off cycle elections, March versus November, staggered terms for council members, special election timeline, 15-month standard versus other. Other than appointments to do all these special elections, special election procedures, cut down on the 49 days between first election and runoff. This is something already covered by statute, carve out for a legal and reinstatement. And the last point about Governor Child, he moved. Does stand for, I don't know if that's in council member Perry Harvey in July 91 reinstated him in December 91. Is this something already covered by state statute? I'm thinking maybe Ken could I hand it to you with what you looked into here, what I learned to hear. What you found, and then I can get us back on track on the conversations.
Good evening, everybody. One personal note, I have another one of our summer law clerks with us next stuff, so she gets to sit up front this time. They volunteered. On the first piece, the off-cycle March versus November, that's just so. Come back to that, second term, again, that's preference, it's an option. Get into that. The special election timeline, the 15-month is actually shorter than typical as far as how the state handles things. There's 20-something months on the state side where something is appointed versus elected. It's a choice that the city have made over time to do it 15 months instead. As far as eliminating appointments and only do special elections, that would be an option. There's not a requirement that you have it. It tends to be more of an efficiency standpoint if there's less time in the term as to how you handle them. But like some charters that have purely a rest of the council just appoints, and others can go right to election.
There's also a budget impact.
As far as the special election procedures cutting down on the 49 days, the 49 is actually less than the number of days for a typical election. It is compressed a bit. What you run into is the supervisor elections calendar. They're also trying to get out overseas ballots, which have to be out 45 days ahead. So you're getting more compression on that, you're likely to have the supervisor come down. Conversation with that. So it is a very tight time frame as it is. But that is, I think, how people probably ended up at the 49 give at least a few days. But it's 56 otherwise under the typical counting process. Something already covered by statute, that's where the ballot language, ballot requirements come into play. As far as when you have to get out overseas ballots, that's usually the first line point as well as making sure you have all the precincts available.
That's a state statute thing or something with the overseas rule and all that? Okay, I was, I'm like, how many, well, yeah, are actually voting overseas,
Correct.
that's a lot of people.
Well, in this area, it's predominantly military,
Right.
because we have the ability for, under federal law to have military votes, people who have residence here also get to vote here during state and local elections as well.
Okay.
So the idea is anyone who has requested an overseas ballot, it's to give the time to get there because it still has to be
Right.
back, it has to, it's the only part of Florida ballots that have to be postmarked by election day, and they have, at the moment, they have 10 days after that election day for it to get here. So that's the last part of counting. Every other absentee ballot in Florida has to be received by election.
Right. And,
I'm giving an hour lecture on why that is here.
you know, I don't think.
I didn't think you want that.
Still.
For removal and reinstatement, this actually comes right out of the Florida Constitution. I did look it up and the individual was suspended. He wasn't removed from office, he was suspended at that time. And the Constitution allows for the governor then to reinstate someone. If, I'm trying to remember if those criminal charges were dismissed or found innocent, as far as that goes.
You can, is it, not an expert in this, but is it the governor suspends and then the Senate removes? Does the Senate have to vote on it?
The governor suspends, correct, the Senate would remove, but before that period, before removal, the governor can reinstate it. The Senate removal process tends to take quite a while.
Yeah.
To be able to get through. So you end up in the suspension point.
That's the next.
Thank you for
Yeah,
help.
that makes sense.
So I have questions.
So much, yeah, thank you for your presentation, a lot of this was just, I just simply didn't know what was in the state statute, what was in the constitution, it's a lot to look through, and it's pretty dense. Not a lawyer, so breaking it.
I enjoy this stuff, so I appreciate that.
Nothing that I could give the opportunity, because it was so helpful, like you said, some of this, it just seems like we can't do anything about.
Right, a lot of it's mechanism, how do you get things moving, in order to make sure you can have an election, the supervisor elections will say the more time the better.
Well, the reason I wanted to bring some of these questions up is because we recently had a special election and there was a lot of chatter in the community about how that ran and what if things could be different. So I felt like it would be the right thing to do to honor some of those conversations, to be able to talk about that in this context. Seems like I said, the 45 days, we don't have a lot of wiggle room, you know, the 49 is there for a reason. Sounds like the removal of the state and reinstatements in the Constitution, that's written in stone. I think the only part we kind of left off on was the election dates, which we started to talk about, and then we ended the meeting for time. March 1st, November.
Yeah. Yeah, we did, when we were talking about the relative merits behind assumptions as to whether or not November elections would increase voter turnout or not. I think we ended up mostly landing on keep it as is, if I can recall, 2 weeks, a long time. Did you want to talk more about that, Lottie, with respect to asking the group for discussion around that item? Or not? I thought we landed, but if you want to bring that back up, are we good on that?
Can we just seal the deal and
Yeah.
kind of go around like up or down, keep it the same, or open to the conversation to change?
Okay, who wants to entertain changing it? Would be to November, right, because it's currently done in March.
Or just change from what it is now to something else
Okay,
for further discussion.
does anyone by show of hands want to discuss that and then have the group discuss it more to get to a different answer?
Clarity, you want to extend it, you want to make it long, shorter, or long?
It's the date on which the election happens, so
Yeah.
currently the election's in March.
Obviously,
Obviously, that's kind of, I wanna change the date.
I think most of us were saying, let's keep it as is in March, but Bobby just wanted to I think it's sorry,
Because we weren't.
in case anyone agrees that it's worth talking about, it doesn't look that way. Unless actually you wanna talk about it, I don't think anyone else does, but. Right.
Jason, two of us want to talk about it, we're still out voting.
Or, I wanted to give you a chance to say a few words and then we could just to. See something.
Oh.
Yeah, to that.
if you have any points that were brought up that are new points ever.
No, I made my points last time, I was happy to have that discussion again. Kind of, I felt like we were going a certain direction, but we never stopped the landing, I just wanted to be sure we were able to wrap that out.
So keep it as is. But thank you, again, I just wanna make sure, Bobby does a lot of work on it, so you give you a chance to ask that question. All right, we got great input from Ken, thank you. I'll start, I'm not gonna read this one, it's too long. Does anyone have any suggested changes to the charter language or topics to get us to that with respect to 10.01? Once going twice, okay? Can you hear us okay, Bill?
Alright. Did we, I believe Steven said, like, if there were some studies that were available, if it did help voter turnout, if those could be pulled up, that would be helpful, but there were no studies, is what you're saying. Rob, you didn't see any type of study that showed that helped.
Oh, no, there's definitely. Is it okay if we open that up? Just
Yeah,
a
I mean,
question.
let's just answer it and move on.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to also say, yes, we should have a conversation about it, it's not clear, I agree. Like if.
Right. But I never wanna shut anyone down, I mean, at some point,
I think
it's
it's
not,
not, something we're potentially, sorry.
but we talked about that at length last time.
Yeah,
Around whether or not moving it might do that, it was
Right.
inclusive.
right, and nobody really had everybody had the same opinion of whatever, if it did help voter turnout, that would be great, but we have no way of knowing for sure that it would actually help voter turnout. Was what it was, but if it does, yeah, I would be for that if it was not the same year as like. I guess presidential, like it won't get like, muffled out by.
My argument was, can't possibly be worse, and people are used to voting in November, so maybe their antennas would be up. Maybe we get more people, but other than that, I haven't heard really any other. Suggestions about how we could improve this process.
But everyone's
That's all I
saying
got.
turnout's an issue, everyone wants it better, but I don't think everyone, that would be the fix necessarily.
It would almost be a two-part question, not only voter turnout, but you would have to find out what is. The level of ballot drop off, because in any election, including presidential elections. There is a steady drop off in the number of people actually casting ballots going down. For the lesser offices and ballot questions and so forth. So the longer the ballot, the more there is ballot drop off in terms of people casting those votes. I would imagine there would be studies into that as well. And so if you were to take the question as a whole, I think we need the answer to both turnout and drop off.
One compelling thing that we talked about last time for me was that in the November election cycle, the ability to buy media is greatly reduced because it's so much more expensive, which makes rich people more likely to get elected because they put time and kind of hinders access. So for that reason, I'm more in favor of more.
Yeah, we talked about that, we talked about down ballot right, quality, if you wanna use that way. Effects of major things happening in the country that sort of color voting that aren't really local, all those things we talked about that actually.
If there was, I don't know if there's a reason why March is big, but what if it was like around July, around 4th of July, where people are all patriotic? No, school's out, vacation.
Vacation, they're all.
Vacation.
Guessing a lot of. Also smart people have tackled this before and we did, so I think we're okay on this, that we agree on the major topics. What we just discussed, we pretty much discussed last time. So I'm gonna keep us moving, is that okay?
I just want to smart
One more
people.
thing, last thing,
I think so.
because we. Thanks, Rob.
Of course, yeah, please.
Because we talked there were questions about data, so just to add some color, this was a question about data from what I've read. When local elections are held in on-cycle election seasons, president, governor, turnout is higher across ballots So for the state, for the president and for whoever's on the local election. The demographics of the voters are a lot different when they're on cycle because you have more people come out to vote, so you get just more voters and that's a different demographic. Just one other thing, but I mean, based on what I read, it seems, yeah, on cycle, you just get more people, you get more voters.
Yeah, I would think the local people on the ballot, people would come out, more people would come out and vote for that over the president. I don't know if it was drop off of president, there'll be more people like, you know, this is somebody that's gonna be affecting me in my local states, I don't know, but.
So I think this is a case of we all want greater voter turnout. We hear you, but just based on the earlier poll, I think that the large majority of the group is okay with the section. So I'm gonna keep us moving forward. I appreciate it. I don't want to shut you down by any means. And of course, at the end, we'll have a wrap up period if anyone decides they find something, come down and go. So the next one is as short as the prior one was long. Succession. This one from Bennett. The office of the everything vacant, the chair of the city council of such positions vacant, the chair pro temp shall succeed. In the office of mayor until successor is elected as required by law. Any changes to that language from the group, 10.02? Discussion items now, okay. 10.03 is the prohibition of discrimination. No one shall engage in practices that will result in discrimination, summarizing. The city shall implement a comprehensive harassment and anti-discrimination and disciplines in cultural competency training program for all cities at an integral manner as established by ordinance. So I guess it's saying something has to happen, but the ordinance needs to tell us what that is. 10.03, any changes to that or the discussion items for 10.03? Ethics. I actually spoke about ethics early on, if you remember, when we talked about the mayor, procurements and those sorts of things. City council may adopt a code of ethics and or laws relating to conflicts of interest supplemental to and cumulative other provisions of this charter. And that no general law for officers and or employees 10.04, any changes to that? Okay.
When do we go back to stuff, when we know, when we have more stuff with that at the very end?
Yeah, so we haven't made the practice of going in loops, we're just pushing through. We have some open discussion items, some of you brought up, some good public comments we haven't really zeroed in on. I think after we do all of that, we can take a step back and give everyone a chance to reflect. And if anyone wants to revisit it, we can do it at that time, but definitely want to finish first to make sure we hit that mark. And then if we have time, we can, but thank you for the question. This is one of the less exciting sections, facsimile signatures. Basically using facsimile signatures being allowed, except with regard to passage of ordinances. You guys can read that, any changes to 10.05? Okay, 10.06, reemployment. The former elected official shall hold any compensated appointed city office or employment until 1 year after the expiration of the term of that person's term, provided however the provisions of the section shall not take effect until January 1st, 76.
You'd probably strike the provided 1976 language.
Yeah, that's a little back there until
The rest of it sounds
Would
good.
you agree with that? No change, that would be a change, okay. We can do that. So updated, right?
But you're right, I wasn't picking up on.
Good question. I'm not sure.
That's what I read in the book.
76 is the base, you know that.
Worn down by the.
No. Then I go where it down.
To be here.
I'm right, no, we're going.
Okay, this one's a little longer. Initiative and referendum 10.07. You guys can probably read this, qualified voters shall power to propose ordinances to the council. Require reconsideration of any adopted ordinance. By petition signed by electors, etc. form and content. You guys, I'm not gonna read all this, it's a bit long. We did however have a question from you, Bobby, on this, I just realized, but I wrote it down so I didn't forget. From Bobby, can there be an explanation of how the recall procedures would fill in as the initiative and referendum procedures, the section for initiative and referendum petition states the form and content of such petition shall provide for under the provisions relating to recall of officers as provided herein. Then section 1008 for recall directs the reader to 74-130. Was that something, Ken, you dug into? Could you
Yes,
that be rude?
74-130 is now the current state law. That's where that began when it comes to recall of elected officials. So at the end of the day, what this does right now is simply include state laws provisions.
Can I answer your question?
No,
Go ahead, Rebecca.
it refers to the state statute. And we don't, we haven't followed the state statute.
What's your question, Mr. Bobby?
No, I'm so confused.
Well, I'm gonna second Bobby's confusion, just in that we're talking about proposing ordinances, and then they say the form and content shall provide for under the provisions relating to recall of officers. So I just didn't track it.
I think what it's saying.
I think somebody just told me what it says.
I think what it's saying is there's a provision in state statute for the recall of elected officials, and that is the process that is followed. Ken, is that fair?
Yeah, what it's referring to is the petition that's used, there's a standard adopted petition that's used for recall, and that can be converted over to use for initiative and referendum.
Okay.
There is one mystery on this section, on 10.7. It has a sentence at the end that says that it needs to be an implementing ordinance, regarding this process. And so far I haven't found that. I've requested from the city attorney's office, and they're working on that piece, to see if that has been adopted. It's not a mini code.
Yes, yeah, that's what wasn't clear to me, because they were referring to two separate processes, a recall versus, say, for example, you want to get an ordinance onto the ballot for.
Right, we're generally talking about petition form, is how it links to that. I don't know what the different process as far as that goes, but it's just an existing petition process that's out there.
About petition form, you mean, like, what needs to be.
Right, if you want
Start
to,
your petition.
correct. Right, if you want to initiate the process for an initiative or referendum or recall. It's a petition gathering process, and the layout for that and what needs to be included is outlined in detail in the state recall law. As far as the subject matter and how it is handled in terms of petition gathering.
Gotcha.
So I think it's probably not the most artful way of incorporating the state process, but I think that was the intent of what this language then implements.
So just so I can understand it with a real world example, if somebody wanted to petition to undo or recall an ordinance, and I'm probably mixing terms here, but there's an ordinance someone didn't like, they wanted to start a petition to undo that ordinance, they would step by step in the recall process with state statute.
Correct, as far as the number of signatures required and all what is full from the recall process that you have to take on.
And how to collect them, you have to get a signature, address, all, it's very
We have
specific.
very
about it.
intense petitioning
Yeah.
gathering rules now that also pull in from the various parts of the election code. So, and then with each of these, the idea is that you would present something to council that we want to either pass an ordinance or get rid of an ordinance. Council has the opportunity to do that on their own. If they don't, that's where you can trigger a vote of the people on.
But don't you have to validate the petition first with the elections officer, and then it's validated then in the code council? Because they have to count the signatures,
They have to run-
validate their people, the addresses, all that.
Right, they have to run through the entire process that's outlined in state law to have a valid
That's what I'm
petition.
getting at.
Right, and then that's presented to council for action. The idea is that council can cut it off instead of going to vote of people, so yeah, we agree with you, we're gonna put that in place, so we're gonna take that away.
For the 2019, city council approved an initiative that required them to adopt an ordinance for writing procedures that then they failed to do.
Well, I don't know
They're
yet,
doing that fine.
Haven't found it yet.
Okay.
So I assume if it hasn't been done, it probably will get done as a result of your questions. But we will give the city attorney more time on that.
So for this one, might as well wait for that.
Yeah, I'll report back
We
with the
visit.
next meeting, either way, is to
Now we
whether
can.
the ordinance is found or
So we'll circle back to this next time. Very nice taking action. Thank you, Ken. Guys are finally making him do some work.
2 meetings in a row.
Yeah.
Great.
No, lots of mouths. Okay. 10.8 is even shorter than the prior one. Call elected officer shall be governed by chapter 74 laws of Florida. Any changes 10.08? So, pass. And moving right along. This is a little bit longer, severability and retention. We're talking around if any reason any of the language in the charter is thought to be greater than constitutional, etc. What we do about that, I'll let you guys read this. As you already have, and there's a lot there. Any changes or discussion items for 10.09?
One of the part of the charter is made unconstitutional, the rest of the charter still stands.
On one
So
side.
really, we should have-
Emergence. 10.10. Charter review, that's perfect timing. This is really governing the way you and your future colleagues go through this process, is my understanding, correct? So we're living this right now and looking at piece of the charter, any changes to 10.10, get ahead of Rebecca.
So the county, as I understand it, has a charter review committee and they direct their charter review after deliberation, and if I'm correct, I think 2 public hearings. And 2/3 vote directly to the people without sending it back to the Board of County Commissioners. And I had a question for Ron, who I think was here when the charter review provision was put in. And I was just wondering if you all had discussed sending it directly to the people rather than sending it back to a body that it may affect. And what your thought process was in sending it back to city council. And it kind of occurred to me when we have received memos back telling us not to bother to look at things because it would never pass it. And seeing that, it's my understanding that there's not a majority that does it one way and a majority that does it another way and what I've been in mind. It seems both are plausible. I think the state doesn't go, and Bill could probably reflect on this because I think you were on the charter, the constitution.
Yes.
I think.
Yep.
You all do not send it back to the legislature, those go directly.
Absolutely not. They, once we're convened, it's not make up, but we establish our own rules. It's a process. And then any proposed amendment, which we vote on by a 2/3 vote, goes on the ballot. It is only subject to the Supreme Court review if there's any questions or issues concerning how the language is written. But no, the legislative branch nor the governor has any input once we voted.
Again, I'm not saying that I feel one way or the other, but I just wanted to ask what the discussion was to send it back to city council and to have this whole thing created by ordinance, which then allows them to dictate what we can, apparently dictate what we can and cannot look at and limit, the number of votes that are required to send things back. And I think they had a very thoughtful discussion on it. I'm not criticizing city council at all, but it's very different. That was a commission.
It's a great question. I'll first admit, the thing I don't remember is whether before we did this 8 years ago, I think there was provisions in here on how to amend the charter. I don't remember if the requirement that it go back to council pre-existed or not. I know we talked about it at the time. And I think the conventional wisdom was that there may be things that the city council knows and thinks of that we don't, so it's an additional check filter before it went to the voters. But I don't know the question of I think that process may have existed prior to us being constituted on how a charter would get amended. It wasn't a charter review process, it was a statement on how to amend the charter. And I would say, I would be interested in changing the review cycle back to 10 years, so. In the original startup from 76, my recollection is there was no periodic review. And in 8 years ago, we talked about our review commission. Talked about the benefit of having it review periodically. For some reason, I don't know if it's after we passed the 10-year review. A few years after that, the city council amended it on their own and made it 8 years ago. What I would say is, I believe that the city council can change the charter at any time, they propose amendments at any time, so it's not as if you have to wait 10 years if there's a problem, The question is the balance between doing that frequently enough and not too frequently. And I do think that, from a stare decisis perspective, from a consistency of law perspective. And that it's not good to amend the Constitution too frequently, right? The reason why we don't have a state constitutional one every year, there's a reason why the federal Constitution is hard to amend. It creates some stability. So I still have the opinion that 10 years is better than every 8 years. I also think that doing it 8 years puts it on the cycle of the mayoral election, which makes the process political, which I would submit to you, I've kind of felt that a little bit this time around, which is not good either. This should not be a political process. This should be a process about what's good for the citizens of the city of Tampa. I don't feel super, like, if nobody else has a desire to consider the interval time, we can move on, but I would be in favor of taking it back in 10 years.
So I think your question was more around, but from the time we that on the Senate, the council, it's just the people, and this doesn't actually cover the fact that issues go to city council at all if you read this. It just talks about how the appointment. I don't believe it says it shall provide it to city council.
I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself.
Is it a different section where it covers that? If so, what we need to do is back up the 8 versus 10 is get conservative.
I'm fine talking about the whole charter review process together.
Yeah.
Now, is the basic difference between the way the city and state, like I said, and on the state level, it's that sort of review advisory mission, not empowered to, or empowered to make suggestions to the city council, but not to independently decide what the changes are, and that is different than at the county level or even at the state level. That it was set up to be advisory, not more empowered, compared,
Totally, it was set up to be more advisory than. And my question was, does anyone feel like it should be set up more like the state or more like the county? And I'm not falling on the sword on that one. I think that there's some merit in having an additional level of review. But it did also, and maybe something in the middle would be taking it out of the election cycle.
Right.
Because I personally felt a little like there were some politics going on that weren't necessarily pure charter review that were telling us what we should look at or not look at, and it's totally. I'm not criticizing city council and I'm not criticizing the mayor. I think they were well within their purview, and in fact, it's super helpful for them to say, hey, here are some things that we felt you all should look at, and we think maybe you come back and say there's nothing to do, and we're fine with that, and that here are some things that are sticky or whatever. That was wonderful, but it did feel a little bit politicized. And
One way to find some parity there would be to have the charter review commission be able to make the decision, but it could be vetoed by like a supermajority vote of council, so it's there and it's a different assessment, it's not just if we provided advice to the group.
Yeah.
We've made a decision and there's a check and balance on the decision. And again, I'm brainstorming here, advocating.
Hey, Ken, Rob,
Go ahead. Then we'll go to clean up. Good, Bill.
you know, I gave a lot of thought to this, and I would not have a commission such as ours not have a check and balance and be able to send things directly to the voters. There's just a lot more involved on the state level. There's teams of people helping. There's 37 of us. We have lawyers working for us. There's just a lot more there. I think it would be hard for us to take this and put it directly on the ballot. I think having some form of check and balance, whether it's what Ron was just suggesting, or whether, it's more authority for the city council, but we need some form, I think, of check and balance.
Thank you, Bill. Kathleen?
Yeah, I mean, I agree in terms of this that's currently construed, as an advisory board, and so it's really not an effective. It's sort of a make suggestions, it's not, they're not really looking for substantive change. And I think we should either say that that's what we all agree, that's what it is, or that we really want to make substantive change, because I think there are some things that the city doesn't have and doesn't do. And that was sort of, you'd have to have a super majority of this vote to go directly to the voters, or you'd have to have, I don't mind the checks and balances of the city council, but maybe it has to be more than just a majority vote. And I think every 10 years, but I think there should be some assigned staff and some research beyond a facilitator.
Yeah.
To really actually say, do polling with the city people, city groups that use city charter, city issues, and say, how can this be better? Because I think we're doing a superficial job with random inputs. And I'm not dismissing anybody's time and effort at this, but, I don't know a lot about how the city works or doesn't work. I've read the charter numerous times, but I think there's other cities, like doing a real comparison with what cities we want to look like and how we do. That's how I would like to see it in the future. And I think doing it every 10 years is more than enough. I think less is better in terms of the review, but more substantive or allocable costs or budget. And if it does go back to the city, I like that you raised that, because I sort of thought about that, but I think that they should have to have a supermajority before it goes to the voters.
The state's is 20 years, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be okay going beyond 10 years, but what I would say is to put it in context. I'm not sure what happened before 1976, but that was when our modern charter was adopted. The last charter review commission was the first one in like close to 40 years, and then we're the second. Last time there was a lot of change because over 40 years, practice had changed quite a bit, and the priority to catch up to it. But I think as we're seeing this time, there's not a ton of change, and if there's a need, we can do it. Soon, the city council can initiate something if there's a problem.
When the charter was first reviewed, actually talking about, was there more staff, more help?
The staff that we had at the time, the city attorney and the city council attorney staffed the group. So I think we've the amendments that city council made after the charter review commission added Ken's position, so that's more staff, not more different staff, right? Because we had an attorney, which is the city council attorney, but the city attorney, and there was more city staff there. There was a facilitator, but there was someone from the mayor's office, there was someone from council, my recollection, and there were 2 lawyers that was.
When you were both referring, Kathleen and Ron, the supermajority, was that in relation to vetoing the suggestions of the group not adopted, right? Because that would create a higher hurdle, do I understand? I probably,
Yeah, my
Supermajority to
suggestion was if we created a veto, it could be a veto by simple majority, that way if there's, you know, a real problem with what the commission did as a check and balance, but the commission's recommendations would, short of that, would go to the ballot.
understood. So that gives this group's suggestions more weight and a greater chance of going through, okay.
I just have a couple of questions for Dan. Go ahead. So if some hypotheticals, if the charter review met every 10 years instead of 8, how would that affect amendments going to a ballot, since it would be not on the cycle with the local election, or would it be?
Well. It wouldn't be right now it's on the direct cycle with the ballot. So we have to figure out in the language as to whether that's called by special election, it defers off to the next general election. How that would function.
Forgive my ignorance, I forget this. Are the city council seats all on the same exact cycle? Yes.
Then
Right now, then I'm not sorry, because I didn't mention Stagford, but.
That's not a question for Ken. Maybe it's different at the state level or at the county level, but if the charter review had their recommendations bypass the council and go straight onto a ballot, would that violate the legislative powers of the council? I know they do that at the state. Is there something in the state constitution that allows that? I just didn't know this all.
Well, that's what you would be creating, you have to read this section with 10.11 together. Because right now, the only mechanism to amend the charter is through the council. So that's why, even though it doesn't say you can't go to the ballot here, the only way right now is by council. We would have to create a provision in 10.11 that allows for this reconstituted body to also have access to the ballot when it comes to the charter. But that's not something that's prohibited constitutionally or statutorily. It's just not part of this particular charter. The Hillsborough one, I'm very familiar with it, the 2 of their charter review boards. And the charter review board entity, it basically exists as a charter entity all of its own. Once they're appointed, they have individual power to go directly to the ballot. That's why they have to do public hearings and all that as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions or points to throw in the mix before we get a sense for where the room wants to take this? On both the mechanism by which it potentially gets to the ballot and on the frequency. And potentially even on the resources point you mentioned before. So we have 3 things being put around. Any other inputs? Before we dive into this a little bit more purposefully. Okay, so then maybe we can do the time cycle one first, maybe that's the most straightforward. So 2 options have been thrown out there. One is on a 10-year cycle, we have to work on logistics to get it on the ballot. The other is keep the 8, but make it off cycle, which would mean at some point doing it maybe 6 and then 8 after, something to that effect. Quick poll, show of hands, how many people wish to change it from 8 to 10? 3, 4.
I'm gonna change it, but not to 10.
Okay.
I'd like to keep it on cycle, so we're not charged for the next election, so I would go to 12.
Okay.
Is my math crazy?
So
Which
So
one?
12, Bill, I'm sorry, I can't see from where I'm standing.
yeah, it's-
But I just want to get your thoughts on that question, and then we'll bring it back into the fold. So the question, we want to.
I was supportive of the 10 years, the goal being off cycle. It's hard for me to follow all the conversation. I'm not sure what Rebecca just pointed out with the 12-year though. I didn't hear that.
Somebody raised the issue, and I don't remember who, but raised a very good point that perhaps city council change it from 10 to 8, so they weren't having to pay for a special election, which is very expensive.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, okay.
Well, I agree that I'd rather have it. I don't think that constitutions and charters should be amended very frequently. 8 to 10 doesn't seem like a big deal, but I would prefer it to be longer and have more gravitas to the committee. But I'm not for having an entire special election for 2 years. But so then I was thinking, actually, I think 12 would be a better number. It keeps it with the elections. You're not having to have a special election. But it's not every 8 years, it's every 12 years.
I agree. Yeah.
Take that as a motion, I'll second it. We'll see where we go.
It seems majority of us are nodding. Bill, are you nodding along now?
Yeah, I'm nodding along with that. I thought that sounded like a really good idea.
Motion to change to someone has to do it, I can't take.
Yeah, well, I have to make the
So,
I'll make a motion to change from the charter review advisory commission or whatever it ends up being from 8 years to 12 years.
There a second? Second. Alright, so moving to properly second, all in favor say aye. Okay, more discussion, sorry, for discussion.
I was just trying to work out the math on that, I'm not opposed to sweaters, I kinda like that idea, so I just wanted to throw out some years for elections here, so if that passed in 2026. I don't know, wrong, I'm gonna have to get it. But what I'm afraid is that charter amendments may come up when there's not a mayoral election. Problem with that is even less people show up if there's not a mayor on the ballot, so I don't know if that's in your consideration, so
There's a mayor on the
it's
ballot.
10%.
Most the elected officials that are 4 years. Mayor's always on the ballot.
Should be. Sure. I was thinking, because when, in the last election. Probably know the results of that, but like there was a whole lot of turnout if there's not, an open seat for the mayor. Once again, like nobody to show up.
Shame on people for not showing up to vote, I mean.
I'm not gonna disagree with you.
different issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
That's the charters.
Yeah.
Amendments on the ballot, you need to go to the polling place or get your absentee ballot.
I wanted to change the voting stuff, but you guys said.
It's a different issue, or. But can we close the loop on the motion, so there was a second, was it? Can we ask,
Shame on you, shame on.
No, I mean, I think any minutes.
can you ask a hearing for all those in favor, because we kind of got there, but then probably one minute comment, so I'm sure to do this one.
Okay, I wanna entertain a motion.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
all in favor.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Then check.
Motion passed. One.
Okay. Great. The next question concerns the means by which all of the ideas the CRC, suggestions the CRC makes. What happens to those currently? It goes to city council, they can decide if they want to or not. A radical change would be right to the ballot, and we talked about a middle solution by which it would go to city council and only be removed consideration for the ballot of the supermajority of the council vetoed, taking a suggestion in a list of items. I don't know how to read the room on this, but I'm just throwing a quick vote before we do a motion. How many
Can I ask
people?
one question?
Yes, please.
Has it always been an advisory charter review commission? It's always been titled that.
This is only.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
before 8 years ago, there was no charter review commission, I don't think.
No, I thought that
We created it.
okay.
I think even if you guys wanted to do something, made it more difficult to overturn it. I think it's still advisory at the end of the day, but if you want to change the name, I wasn't sure you're going.
The genesis really to think about it as city council, and I'm just not putting words in the council at the time's mouth, but my understanding was. City council realized the charter hadn't been looked at since 1976, and rather than then take up all the work. They created an advisory group to help them figure out what changes needed to be made. And then one of our suggestions was we memorialize that periodically and continue that process.
Okay, I'll ask a more open-ended question, because I got a couple last time, we're going right to 10, we ended up at 12. Joe of hands, how many people would like for the CRC suggestions to have, looking for the right words, to somehow doing the words, to be more.
How about we just ask if anybody would like to make a motion to revise the process, ask Ken to draft language to revise the process. Such that the determinations of the Charter Review Commission would be placed on the ballot except for the city council's ability by supermajority vote to veto any specific change. That's a
According to our motion, go right to it, we can get a quick pulse that way too, let's do that, so is that your? Is that?
I'm not making the motion, I'm just asking, I articulated.
So what on the set, show of hands, how
Did-
we approach?
Did he say majority? Did he say majority or super majority?
I said supermajority, Bill, which is not.
Okay, good. Okay, that's fine. I just couldn't hear too well.
So show of hands, do we like the direction before we do a motion?
Can I just restate what I thought I heard you say?
Yeah.
So just to make sure I understand. So you're saying that recommendations from this committee would go straight to a ballot unless overturned by a supermajority veto from council?
Correct.
I feel like we do that, it's definitely like what Kathleen said, there needs to be some polls and all, like a much more in-depth process.
Right,
And
that'll be,
with the input of city, I know city employees can't be on this committee, but I talked to a lot of city employees. And they know the inner workings of this city, but they cannot speak or cannot be a part of these boards, which is unfortunate, because they see the back end of the working of this machine that we call the city of Tampa. So, I definitely think that some conversations need to be happening, sorry, don't get the point, within the city of Tampa, but if we do that, that definitely needs to happen, that process.
right, so let's do one and then the next to see where we land.
Just for comment.
Any comments before we get to the point of deciding, so Alan and Steve?
Just a question, if we're going to change it to allow the city council to overturn the decision that this commission makes, the mayor still has the right to veto suggestions, correct?
The super majority.
Well, that's my question. So the mayor cannot override or veto.
This will be whatever we would try.
I would think, Alan,
They can't do it
the
today.
mayor could, the mayor, what the city council would be able to do is say, no, that's not gone on the ballot, like they would have a veto right, the mayor would preserve. Anyway,
But the city council could then override the mayor's veto.
correct,
To
put it on the ballot.
by a supermajority or by just a majority.
This, I would imagine the same process, which I think Ken is, and any mayoral veto needs a supermajority vote to override, right?
Correct, we would have to, that all of that is in the ordinance process right now, we would have to pull in a similar process into this provision.
So, but just, it would be a supermajority plus one. Right, or supermajority.
To veto,
Well, if she vetoes something that was voted on by supermajority, they're just sending it back as like ping pong, so is it supermajority plus one?
yeah, that's a good question, so. Think about it this way, there's a change to 10.01 that a charter review commission suggests. The path of that would be, it's gonna go on the ballot unless city council says no by supermajority vote, takes it off. If they take that off by supermajority, the mayor can't put it back on. If they don't veto it, the mayor has a separate right to veto it. And if the mayor then vetoes it, the city council can override the veto and put it back on the ballot.
But if the first vote is supermajority successful, then mayor has no ability to pursue.
Correct, because there's nothing then that goes on the ballot, and the mayor can't place it on the ballot herself. Which is
That's a good question.
consistent with today, because the mayor put out, the other, again, I'm making a suggestion based on the issues that Rebecca, I think, well, the good issue she raised. The other thing to put in context is, we're all here because somebody appointed us, and so. Regardless, whatever the process is, the city council members and the mayor are going to be very careful about who they appoint and. Presumably have some communication with their appointee, so it shouldn't get too far afield, like this group should never be like rogue compared to what the mayor and city council want to do, because those all represent one facet, so. Philosophical.
I have a question right now, but our recommendations as we're currently constructed go to the city council and they can decide. The mayor has no input, yea or nay, correct?
If the city council votes to put it on the amendment,
She can veto it.
she can veto it and then they can override with two-thirds.
Right, the city council would have to initiate the charter amendment process based upon our recommendations. And then that goes through the typical process, the mayor has the ability to veto it.
As far, so everything. What all actually ends up on the ballot, because we're changing sentences, adding periods, deleting commas, like what all would actually be on
Everything.
Any of it, regardless of what we consider to be small versus large. It would all be on the, right, it would all, if it gets to that point.
What you're presenting is a report of a series of recommendations. So if the council then wants to move forward, then it would be turned into an ordinance that places the question on the ballot then.
So if there's two words stricken out that you put it on the ballot.
It could be.
That's what the hold off on me, sometimes, like. You gotta vote on each one?
I would be interested to know the last time we had the, you know, we went to the ballot, what the drop off was. Between the top of, you know, the ballot and, you know,
You mean, how many people voted for like the amendment that approved first and then how many people made it all the way to the bottom?
or even
The names
if, you
were
know,
first.
the offices that people were running for, and then. As you get to the charter review questions, you know, what the drop off was. Well, I don't know if that exists, but that would be interesting to know.
So they would vote on each change, not the bundle.
It probably exists to the extent there is historical data as to what the for and against for each thing on the ballot is, right? You know how many people voted for each person with mayor, so somebody could construct that data.
And we can request that the supervisor elections if the group is interested. If they have, by law, they have to count under votes and over votes, you know, that are easily go.
But is that, I mean, it's a good question, but is that material to the decision on this issue?
Can we state what we're deciding again?
Right.
To summarize that again, the suggestion is that we change one part of the existing process. The only part that we're suggesting changing is rather than the charter review commission being purely advisory. But before and it's the council please or if they want. Change would be that the decisions of the charter review commission would be headed to the ballot. But for a veto of the mayor, the rest of the process would stay the same. I'm sorry, veto of council, I think there's not.
Currently, they would still need a simple majority to take our ideas and move them forward, correct? Okay. So we're upping there, it's a higher.
The reason I threw that out for discussion is I think Rebecca's question was county and the state both have the commission goes directly to the ballot. And should we change that? I think there was some discussion around this danger of that because we don't have the same resources, for instance, that the state does as the commission. So we keep some check and balance, and this was just one suggestion of how we're gonna keep check and balance.
Right, Bill explained that pretty thoroughly based on his experience. So we're really creating. In some ways, a greater opportunity for this group's recommendations to move forward, or a higher hurdle to stop them from doing so.
I like suggestion. Rather than wasting, I don't wanna say wasting more time, but spending a lot of time going in circles. Maybe we phrase it as taking a vote on who wants to just keep it advisory, and if there's not a consensus or whatever it is we're supposed to have to move forward, we just don't even need to dwell in the details.
Is it not still advisory even if the barriers?
I'm purely advisory.
Yes,
We are purely, hey, here's some thoughts for you to have.
right, versus those that we
If
go.
everyone agrees that that's fine, then we don't need to like spend 2 hours trying to figure out where I'm gonna go.
Take a straw vote as to whether.
Yeah, so you wanna change anything. So, sure,
I'm not reading any spaces, so I don't know.
no, I'm trying to read it from two. How many people wish to keep the CRC's methods exactly as they are today? Show of hands.
With the
Keep them as they are today, advisory only, pure advisory.
Could be okay.
putting aside the time component of our vote on.
Time is yet now decided. This is just purely the means by which we are advisory or less advisory, the more impactful to the ballot. So keeping it as is, show of hands, nothing changes. 3. Bill's hands not up. Show of hands, how many wish to change it to be?
Five.
Oh, we did?
Yes.
We did have 5, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we're, great conversation, we'll leave it as is then, okay?
Are you okay with that?
Oh, I'm completely okay, I just wanted to bring it up as a discussion.
Can I ask Ron a quick question? Did you, just out of curiosity, the last time you did this, did you get any binders with comparisons with different city charters? Did you get any material at all?
My recollection is yes, and it's 8 years ago, so I don't remember the exact materials, but we. You know, there were a couple of things that are a little bit different. There was a ton of public participation at. Some meetings we had 45 minutes of people coming up, which is a lot of public participation because. There was so much that could be changed. And my recollection is we did look more at what was out there because the idea was this is so old, it's 40 years old. How do we modernize it? So in this session, we're less modernized because it already was modernized, but then we were looking at what the trends were for those 40 years.
So materials were provided to you?
Again, my recollection, yes, I don't remember like the details of the materials, but yeah. I have to be honest with you, I looked, like I even looked online and tried to find, I couldn't even find a list of who was on the whole charter commission online. I had to like diligent search and ask AI, so they're not,
Yeah.
it's before we were reporting a lot digitally, I guess.
The next week, we have our airport site, I just go in there and be like, yeah.
I will say the minutes from the last one are so detailed. I found all the minutes and it's like pages and pages and pages from a single meeting. Like, everything everyone said is in there.
They probably didn't record it, put it on YouTube though.
No.
Yeah, transcript.
No, video transcripts.
Differences, we were in council chambers. And they have the technology where it's post captioning and stuff, and I think everything was recorded, I don't know if I get it, unless it is somewhere, but.
Yeah.
So it's a good segue in the first question, which goes to what Kathleen suggested, I don't know if that's now not as important because we're gonna remain as advisory, that's the recommendation, keep it as is. Do we wanna talk about resources and about help, because we did need help, we brought in speakers, I think there could have been more research if we had the time. But of course, our bandwidth is only so big and you guys can only do so much. Thoughts on formalizing something that gives us our future counterparts more budget, more resources, more help? How do we feel about that? Just chime in and we can go from that probably.
I mean, I think it would be very helpful to have at least an outline of. You know, these are the biggest cities in Florida and what they do. Just so you can have some frame of reference for how our charter works. That's what I expect. I read a whole bunch of charters, so I can understand how ours work. And my appointee gave me some binders that had some charters and some other stuff. There's a model. Charter for the League of Cities or something like that, but I didn't know if that was her thing that she made or. I wasn't sure she got to the city.
So your contention is, sure, we need more help, we need to have people go bring these documents to us, et cetera, Ron.
I was gonna say, council added Ken's position and your positions here. Like, my question is just in a general sense, I think I saw the engagement agreements, if you guys have it, I don't remember. There's no constraints on us asking you guys, if we ask Ken. He has no constraints on the amount of time he can spend doing it, Ken, is that correct or no?
No, it's constrained budgetarily, so if we reach a point where we exceeded the cap the city has put on, we then have to go back to council for approval.
Yes. So, well, how many hours was that, Ken?
We're not there yet.
I
It
mean,
must not be either, because no one said stop.
I would say that the fact that we have. A facilitator and council are two good resources that we have. I'm guessing we could, if we needed more of Ken's time, we were being frugal with it, we could ask council for more budget, right? We can't I understand why this group has to have some budget, right, we can't be constrained, so I feel like we do have resources, you know. Sue, what can I ask, is it okay with group if I ask Sue a question? You were on the county's.
Yes.
Chart, how did you find the resources that were available to you, and is there any recommendations you have on changing this process compared to the resources available?
It felt, it was abundant. If we asked a question, we got reports and people, I mean, lots of people coming in. It didn't feel like there were any constraints. We asked, it was there. You asked a question in the meeting before the next meeting, there's paper on your desk and the planning commission standing there waiting for your questions.
I will say, and this is an interesting thing for us to think about. The tone and tenor of our start at this chart review was much different from last time, in that the ordinance and the direction council this time felt to me like very prescriptive. Now, we're here with God's counsel, right? So it's, I guess, appropriate for them to tell us what to do and what not to do. But I mean, we had to push and pull on whether we set our own procedures, which the charter says we set our own procedures. And council suggested they set our procedures, right, and it does say pursuant to the ordinance. But I feel like last time we did have more access because we figured out as a group what we wanted to do. And here I felt like it was, you know, you were told what days we're gonna meet, what times we're gonna meet, all of that stuff in advance. We couldn't change that without going back to council, and that may be something we look at here is there's a certain level of independence the group needs to function appropriately, and I'm not, this is level of our members of city councils, it's not a knock on anybody, but there is a certain level of independence that we should have in deciding what information we can get, what resources we have, what budget we have. And I wonder if there's a way to clarify this 10.10 to just help ensure that there's direction that this group has the latitude to get the information it needs to be effective in its stuff.
The way I read 10.10, I thought the intent was that it was established by ordinance, but we were to operate independently. And it seems that it is actually established by ordinance, and by ordinance, they will establish what independence we have.
Right.
And that will be
That's my
the
goal.
change. If somebody wanted to change that, I think that would be either it's in the charter what we have, or we don't need an ordinance to be established. We are established by the charter and we have independence.
It's interesting because not all still on council, but of the prior my party colleagues, 4 of them ended up serving on city council.
It's very,
One of those esteemed members is serving this.
I think one of the sticking points to your point is, this little tagline in here. CRC may adopt rules for its operation proceeding, et cetera, within direction given to it by the city, and that's where it got a little convoluted at the beginning of our meetings. Because we had the ordinance with the rundown from city council, like these are the things that we discussed, this is the structure to follow, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, what does direction mean and who's the city? And it got really tempting. Yeah, there was some conflict there, so I mean, I would be open to a discussion of figuring out how we resolve that so that the next members here can get off the ground and just start
to
doing
deal with
it.
some of this procedural matters for a couple of meetings. Go ahead, Stephen. I wanted to go back and we're talking about 2 things. One is the way we operate. The other is how much we have in resources to assist us in operating. So I want to return to that and then come to this because.
No, I just want to say, regarding the super majority, the vote we just took, that was why I voted no, was I felt like it was creating independence is a bigger issue than just the super majority ability to say no. But if we want to talk about more wholesale realignment of true independence and look for every little spot where we can make a tweak, then that would be a different conversation than if we had it potentially revisit the previous vote, but that's all can of worms. I'm not saying we should do it.
Sure, that's a good point. Going back to resources, if we just recall our process and how it worked out, it was certainly different. Mentioned. We eventually found our stride, particularly with Scott, the city attorney, kind of running point to get things for us. But I was getting things from Scott, I was getting things from CFO. I say I mean here now, so also getting information through Molly and the mayor. Ken was getting information. And if you remember, there's a practical drawback to that, which was any delays cause us to have to backtrack and revisit things that were fresh at the time, to your point, Ron, made that. So we had guest speakers where we could. I would say though, your questions Ron about expanding roles, speaking for myself. I don't know that I already have the bandwidth, juggling, you know, my day job and this and other requirements to give that its due. I think if you're gonna really have a research on, you gotta think about what that looks like and decide what the requirements are. But if we wanna make that in, we can talk about it. I think it's great, these two roles are pretty busy at this, I would say. I think having more would require more, we just have to define it if you guys wanna go that way.
I don't have any of that.
I was, if it's a discussion about adding adding additional resources to. You know, it takes Susan, well, that was a lot more relevant on county basis. I feel like some of the larger issues that we have discussed, I don't. For instance, if you're talking about how other cities, whether it's there in Florida or around the country, do things, requires more research help. If we went in that direction, then I think that we would have to also go back to considering whether, you know, how do I put it, us being more than just an advisory committee, commission, and going back to discussion about that super majorities on the city council to veto what we do here. If it gets to a point that the charter does need more updating than we're considering then.
I wanna ask you a couple follow-ups, so. Help us understand, so the premise is that the changes are broader, but even within the changes we discussed, like your earlier question, I'd be interested in knowing down ballot what the participation was. We talked more about when we were looking at redistricting, right? So even in this, last time we do a moderate level deep dive, we needed more help, and we got as much as we could, but I think there was more we could have gotten.
Yes.
So I'm asking that question to make sure we understand.
Yeah, I mean, in order for us to take on an issue while redistricting, or in the future adding to the city council, then that requires more help than we have. But if we do get that help, then I think that the suggestions made by the commission need a higher level of veto power, you know, whether it's from the city council or the mayor. I think that
So you're kind of linking those two,
yes,
richer research, maybe more detailed suggestions. And therefore more expectation of this moving through the process as opposed to the year faster. Okay, thank you. I just want to understand. Is there kind of two things, Kathleen?
I think that, like, I don't mind the check and balance at all with the city council or the mayor. I just think there's no big ideas. If there's supposed to be the charter. Like, I think zoning is a big issue in the city. In terms of the city we are today to the city we want to go to, how decisions get made. And there's somebody looking at a plan for the city, making sure all the neighborhoods are thought through. And I don't, when I do my analysis, I think that something that's bigger than what's said in the charter today about something should exist. So I go to and I don't think it should just be Florida cities. I mean, what cities are out there that we want to compete with, compare to, be like? And there are components that we're missing that don't exist in our charter. So having a researcher that does this prep before and I don't even mind advisory, because I think that elected officials are always looking for new ideas. I don't think they're running for it. I don't think it's political, big P or small p, but it's like, how do we look at ideas that could make us better? And I think that that's what I thought we'd have a little bit more of, than just going through this line by line and saying this works, this doesn't work. By virtue of the experiences around the table, which I think, you know, we've had resources called in, but. I mean, I'm very well aware of how the state charter ran, because I was involved in it, and there was a huge amount of resources, and I heard the same was available at the county, so. I feel like this is sort of a sidebar that I have to do, but, you know, good luck and. So it's sort of like, if you're gonna commit the time, and I think it gives political people, elected officials cover. To sort of say, let's tease some of these things out, get smart people in the room that are committed to trying this and. But you need some additional resources than we have, so how we would define that, I don't know, I'm not looking for a huge budget, but. I think if you're gonna do it, and you're gonna spend the time and ask people to make appointments. There should be enough to actually do a comparison, competitive analysis of other charters, what's included, what's not. And then have that as a precursor, so you're not just going through the line by line, you're actually thinking about what are sections we should be adding. That actually will be better for Tampa.
Yeah, not what's in front of us, what's missing. I do agree with Alan, except you don't mind it being just advisory, but that we'd have a higher quality.
Well, I prefer it not to be advisory, I prefer to go straight to the voters like the state, but I know that would be a total hoopla, like it was, you know, right at the beginning when we all met, and I think elected officials, city, mayor. They're looking for good new ideas, I'm not afraid.
So just a requirement in general that would help us be more successful.
So I have a sentence, it's like an eye exam for me, it says, necessary funding shall be provided to ensure the full transparent participation in the.
Sorry.
And I'll make the point, but. There is a provision that requires funding for transparency and citizen participation. Maybe we modify that sentence to add for transparency, citizen participation, and I'm gonna use the word, but we get appropriate provision of information and data at the discretion of the CRC. Whereas there's a requirement in the charter that there be appropriations that assure transparency, ensure citizen participation. Maybe we add to that there's also needs to be funding to ensure adequate provision of data and information to the CRC in their discretion, so we can ask for things, and there's a requirement that those things be provided to us.
Steven.
We also have the word time.
Yeah.
I just,
Absolutely support.
because I found it really difficult that like we would ask a question and sometimes because staff isn't.
Like, 3 meetings
We
later.
take 3 meetings later, you have a response, and I mean, I don't think we've had many times for it to be unreasonable for the staff member that is applicable to the section that we're reviewing on that day to be present, but I don't know if that requires a change or if that's just a suggestion, but to me, it was just wasn't clear that they should or shouldn't be here.
Timely, accurate, and complete information is determined necessary by the CRC.
Are we, show of hands, do we want to go in that direction, whether Kevin has some papers for you guys to review? Show of hands, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so we capture that.
Before y'all gonna be on city council, make sure y'all remember what it's equal. Remember where we were.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, that's on, that's on. Regarding resources.
Like you say, it's given, I forgot, and here we are.
Okay. That was actually a good conversation and important, so keep it moving.
Wait, hold on. The Bobby brought up a great point. The second to last sentence, it says the CRC may adopt other rules for its operation and proceedings as it deems desirable within the direction given to it by the city. I think the city should be struck out, and that should be changed to by ordinance or by the council. Because when we started this off, we had a conflict, and I think it's pretty reasonable to assume the next charter review commission is gonna have the same issue.
Very well, good, today, who's here, yeah?
But there is, it's a great point that Bobby made, and it's a good point you made. up toward the top, I think it does say something about it's established by ordinance.
Oh, I
So
see,
I
city council
I
made.
think that last sentence, and this is supportive of the change you're making, I think the last sentence is intended to kind of refer back to that.
I think so too.
So maybe we say, given through the ordinance establishing.
10.1.
I'll let you can figure out the language.
Yeah.
And so we reinforce that, and I make it seem like the city can now do other things to force the group to do it a certain way. Rebecca.
I don't know why we have to be established by ordinance. To me, that was what the problem was. It wasn't that the city and the mayor had an argument necessarily over who got to say what. I think the city council was mad because the mayor said something later than they wanted it to be sent. But to me, the direction came from city council, the limitations on, you know, how many votes are we supposed to have? The whole thing about us saying it's rules and procedures was negated by the fact that city council established it as by ordinance, and through ordinance gave us direction from the city, and therefore said,
Yeah, and I think.
you have, your rules are this.
I think council would have been more restrictive on us. You know, at least in the discussions I had with some council members, I think they would have been more restrictive had they realized we wanted to do other things, and that, again, takes away the independence.
And again, I mean, this is, we don't have to talk about any of this if the whole thought is we are an advisory committee that serves city council. If that's what we wanna be, then that, and then whatever we do goes filtered back to city council, and they tell us what we can look at, not look at. That's fine, this is not like the bridge I'm dying on in my life, but the county says the board shall be empowered to conduct a comprehensive study of any and all phases of county government. The Board of County Commissioners shall provide such professional, technical, and clerical assistance as may be reasonably required for charter review, blah, 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 blah. And we are,
Why do we need an ordinance?
it just sounds really broad until they wrote an ordinance that said
You can only do this.
you can only do these few things. And then later they're kind of like, oh, well, we really want you to be broad, but really only if you follow these very narrow constraints. So
So what would be the, at my ignorance, what would be the mechanism to
the
like
charter,
it on?
the charter kicks it off. You don't have to have.
It just doesn't say.
I'm gonna defer to Ken. Do we have to have an ordinance to create it?
Just kind of implementing.
What you could do is change the language that it's simply an appointment. The action by council to kick it off is the appointment pursuant to the charter.
Yeah.
And we pull out the rest of the council's role, as far as an ordinance. You don't need to have an ordinance in order.
I mean, to me, yeah, I mean, to me, that was what the problem was, and it makes a lot of sense. Oh, let's create it by ordinance, let's set it up, that's gonna give them some guidance. Until it became something, it felt something different to me. And again, if we just wanna be purely advisory, I'm gonna stop talking. But if you guys are saying, maybe if we had additional resources, we could do a comprehensive look, and maybe that would be beneficial to the city. Then we're not getting that if we're being told exactly what we can look at by one of the bodies of government that we're supposed to look at.
And
that goes for both sides.
you can almost guarantee next time what will happen if it stays this way is it's gonna be more prescriptive, the mayor's gonna veto it, and they'll either get cooperative or not. And this group will have their very first meeting in this highly politicized environment, which, you know, I'm proud to say, none of us acted that way toward each other, right? We came in here kind of minded, we just wanted to help. So I think making it somewhat self-executing, in other words, the
appointment is the driver.
is the driver.
Was there an ordinance 8 years ago creating it?
I don't think there was
one.
because the city council just decided on its own volition, I think. I don't know if the mayor suggested it or not, but there was nothing in here about a charter review commission in the charter, so they had to do something to do it.
So we've gone a few different directions. What's being suggested to essentially remove the,
I think we would just strike the words, or I mean, I would defer to Ken to help us. By drafting, but strike words established by ordinance and say there shall be a charter review commission. And then we would strike later in the sentence, Bobby pointed out,
Yeah, here.
and just the within the direction given by the city, like the charter says, we are here.
That was my charter being. Yeah, within the direction given to it by the city, if that was stricken, it would just read, the CRC may adopt other rules for its operation and proceedings as it deems desirable. So it would give you sort of the autonomy and.
It's right now, we're not changing the advisory nature of it, right? We're just talking about us getting together, making recommendations. This
So it goes through that
the
process.
next group will be smart enough to figure out how to do that.
More autonomy, the way you wanna operate, how you wanna work, the system, okay?
Yeah, I think beyond the striking, which I think is where we would go, we'd add language that the appointment is done by resolution.
Correct.
That triggers the process and kicks it off.
Yes,
Do we,
did we want to make a motion to that?
can draft language to the back
The
of us?
motion would be to delete the language that says established by ordinance and given the direct given to it by city council and add the language that the appointments happen by resolution. Obviously, Ken would draft it and make appropriate changes and we would look at it, yeah. Does anybody want to make that?
So,
Second.
no, that's what I did. Okay. I got a motion, and it's been properly seconded, in discussion? Right, all of the favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay.
Great. Thank you for bringing it back up, so we can circle that. Okay, 10.11 charter amendment. City council may propose amendments by ordinance to this charter. We talked about earlier upon adoption. If the council shall submit the proposed amendments to a vote of the electors and then initiation by petition, the electors of the city may propose amendments to the charter by petition, each proposing amendments that should be commenced in the same manner as an ordinance proposed by initiative number 10, section 10.7. We change this to this or discussion items. Everyone good with this? No changes to 10.1. Okay, what about a 5 to 8 minute break before we jump into 11? You guys want to take a few minutes? Or we keep going? It's 7:35 currently. Up to you. Us.
We'll keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going, okay,
Are you good?
good. Okay, Bill, you have any questions on what we discussed?
No, all's good, fellas. I'm gonna be on for a little while longer. I'm losing steam.
Yeah, you feel free to check out, we're late there.
All right, guys. That was a good discussion we just had, though. That was solid.
Thank you. 11. So this is the transitional set of provisions. Former charter, all provisions of special laws of Florida of which the former charter hereby shall claim is comprised of which. And which are not embodied here specifically or by reference, and which are not inconsistent with this charter. Shall become ordinance of the city, subject to amendment or repeal in the same manner as other ordinances. Any changes to 11.1? There are
Well,
I was gonna suggest these are somewhat boilerplate things, rather than go through them all one by one.
Have you changed any of them? Is that what I added? I like it. I mean,
I reviewed them, I didn't have any
Good.
suggestions.
that's very freeing from the inside. Does anyone have any changes to any of these sections of?
just, I'm just gonna kind of read some. 11, 11.01, old charter rules remain, they do not disappear with age. Section 11.02, old laws still in effect until amended or repealed. Section 11.03, I'm reading so just some kind of just
You got some,
make sure I understand what these, each one of these are.
let us know if you have any questions.
Okay. Don't affect, 1103, don't affect officer employee / employees at the time of adoption of charters. And then section 11.04, everything in the city is in the middle. Everything in the city is in the middle of. Nothing changes.
I mean, in 11.03, we saw a reference to 1975.
Okay. strike that out, strike that out.
Which one was that? Last sentence, 11:03.
And both by Herman, the second by
Motion by Alan, second by Darren. All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Alright, 11.04 pending matters, and then 11.5 obligation of contracts reserved. 6 existing rights, obligations, duties, and relationships. Section 1107 pension and civil service status. Down here with that, yeah.
Okay, any changes to, besides this, Article 11? None. Okay,
Billy, where are you in Italy?
in bed.
San Remo. Just down from Monte Carlo.
Good. Go enjoy.
You have that meeting with the folks scheduled?
I was in the Formula One race this weekend. I didn't tell anyone though.
All right. Okay,
So we finished.
well, no,
Well.
Alright, let's go on.
we did, congratulations, we did get through.
Oh, thanks, Confetti.
Listing stuff, there's more stuff.
Confetti.
All right.
Bill, I'm gonna move to our conversation around public comments. I think they're a little bit more concrete, and then the last thing we'll do, we probably won't finish tonight, is really explore the list of broader items, to your point, Kathleen, that are more a question of, is it even in the charter at all? Things like zoning, things like voting, other issues that you guys raised. How to get how to get residents to be more represented by and involved in the process, all that. When we look at public comments, if I'm capturing them all correctly, and I've organized it this way. Many were items we've actually discussed in some cases ad nauseam, and what I tried my best to do, find it wrong mistake, let me know. Is I took each one and basically went back to what I thought was the most appropriate section, and we counted what we discussed and decided. Right, so things around the attorneys, things around redistricting, so those you can look at after the meeting, or maybe you did already, but there were two that really weren't there because they weren't there already to discuss, and the two that were left. One had to do with the concept of, although we did talk about the council's role around investigations. There's nothing in there to react to around for the concept of an independent Inspector General, Ethics Commissioner, City Auditor. If you remember, this came attached to it, right from a former employee who in quite some detail laid out a series of events by which he felt there was wrongdoing. You guys can read that on your own, you probably remember. The point is, this concept, we didn't expressly decide to include because it wasn't there already. And then the second one was from Allison, where she made the point that currently, if people are working, it's impossible for them to attend and participate in local government by virtue of attending city council meetings. So those were two that really, again, we didn't talk about expressly, so I wanted to revisit with this group and see where we want to take it, if anywhere. Does that make sense? Ron, questions?
I was gonna say, if we make a poll as to whether it's good with that discussion of each of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I presume we want to say something because it's public comment, but that's up to you guys to decide. So maybe you can do one at a time. How many people wish to discuss this? Show of hands, 1, 2, 3, I think good enough to discuss it. I'll ask the second one and then we'll go back. How many people wish to discuss the concept of making a council meeting accessible to working? I think there's enough for that too. Okay, so we have interest. So let's start with the first one. I can pull up that story if you wish, or you can find it on your computers.
I would like to get some data from how other cities handle independent, IG.
Some assessment from Ken as.
I know the state has an IG, I mean, maybe it could be a part-time person that's
The
independent.
most detailed one is the city of Jackson. But there are other samples that are out there, Miami Ethics, ethics body mission as well.
I think some cities have them as part-time, full-time job, I mean.
Right.
So
Yeah, there's different combinations that are out there as far as.
I think if you call a state attorney, if you call the state IG, they'll have a whole resource of Clippy. Our IG had all that.
Oh, sure, the state version of it is much more involved.
So then how what goes on in the cities, because they work with the city IGs.
Understand.
Okay.
Yeah, we can certainly bring that back.
Just a second. So going back to your request, you're looking for someone to find out more information about.
Yeah.
What others are.
How other cities that are handling this IG independent ethics function. Is that really full-time? I'm hesitant to add full-time positions. It's not a full-time job. But I think the resource, I think it's important to have an independent IG. So.
And maybe for the next meeting, if you don't know, and I'm not asking you on the spot, but maybe you advise us a little bit on how either the state or other oversight might interplay with this. In other words, are we subject to any audits, reviews, state level or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, there's varying levels, under our constitution, the government has the ability to remove any elected official, under certain circumstances. That was right during your term. So that's something that would be part of this conversation, that no matter what, that would supersede whatever is started. Every grant that comes from the state is subject to audit, and anything that involves state money will also be in consideration. As I'm understanding this, this would be limited to the functions of the city and its employees, the ability to bring some complaints or something along those lines, or are you also thinking to broaden this to any member of the public could file something?
What case are we talking about?
Yeah, what may be helpful is what we can do is bring back, and we get to this before the meeting, examples from other charters that are out there of cities that have done this. There's shorter provisions and there's much longer provisions.
So we can bring that back and have a larger conversation,
There was a presentation given by the chief of staff last Thursday related, and it was a very long presentation, but in it, I thought it was interesting that at the very end, one of the findings was zero findings of legal, with legal justification. And I think that, to me, I think that those types of investigations should be done by the legal department. They shouldn't be done by human resources. It's truly, an issue that it should be easy to go through. That's an organizational decision, that's an executive function, but perhaps it may not be a wholesale rewrite or establishing something that's new and robust that's not there already, but maybe it's more of a checking and balance to make sure that the fox isn't guarding the hen house, or at least that the perception of that can't be claimed, because it's just not reality.
Yeah, because I think the state IG, I think the public can call and make a complaint. It's like a 1-800 number, and then they have to do. There's not a ton of, abuse within the system. So I don't know where the checks and balances are, but I do think it's important to have an outlet somewhere that's somewhat independent, but that they have some reportability.
Getting up to my, for instance, on the screen here, it references an ethics commission, but all of our elected officials would be subject to the state ethics commission, correct?
That's correct. There are some jurisdictions that have a local one as well.
If there was any ethics complaint, the mayor or any member of council, it would be within the jurisdiction of the state ethics system.
Correct, and they enforce chapter 112 of state law, or that's just for all public and election.
Not mistaken, does the city of Tampa also have an ethics board, or did they run that? Stay relevant? They do. So
Set up by order.
The case from public comment, which one are you?
So,
You said you guys have pulled it up on your computers.
yeah, on the SharePoint site on the left, there's a public comment link, and all of the direct entries by the public are chronicled in a list that you can click on and expand. Does that make sense? So on the left of SharePoint, there's a menu,
Okay,
documents, other things, and at the very bottom, it says public comment.
Right.
That's been out there as we get things from the web form, just continues to be a running list.
Just wanted to be
That's my
asked.
question.
They say that, maybe there are other ones, but that's the house it's up for, so are you good with that? Does that make sense?
I thought you were saying like the investigations or something, y'all can pull up the investigations or
What
something.
I'm referring to is this
Okay.
person who submitted this public comment was a former employee who felt wrong.
Okay,
The story he shared is in the public comment inventory.
okay,
And I mentioned that because the details may matter to you, it was very precisely
It was
written.
very precisely.
Also, so my
Thorough.
So,
question is. I presume that the city does a financial audit, likely annually. City has an ethics group and they're subject to the state ethics group. What I'm not clear on is. What are we talking about creating a charter? That doesn't exist already. And that's
So
a,
we need to
that's
see what
a,
other people have in their charters that address this issue. And see if there's anything that exists that we would consider adding. Yes.
I think that explains it, and I mean, in the public comment, it was very specific about organizationally the issues. The perceived issues by that individual.
yeah, but my question to my committee members, we have the answer it partly is based on that public comment. What would any of you like to change? That doesn't exist today. So I'm just trying to understand where our discussions go. And I think what Kathleen just said, what we're speaking about this, I mean, she would like to see what is in other charters that isn't in our charter.
I'd like to see that too. And I think, to Stephen's point, if I'm capturing the sentiment of this public commenter correctly. He felt like there was no recourse for him based on a wrong that he felt couldn't be corrected because of the way the system's set up with HR and things. Starting in house, he went to the people who he thought would be able to help him, and they kind of, and his perception kind of blew him off. So maybe he would help me out, but that's what he felt like there needs to be some recourse in cases where there's employees feel like they're.
I don't know if Wellington Current Ethics Commission is empowered to do or how it works. If we know that there was an outlet, he didn't avail himself of, that's one thing. If there's not, that's another, and that leads us towards some of our views that we need something that would have helped.
But in my experience, with most governments and most companies, that function would sit in HR. So maybe we should ask the head of HR to come because tell us what the process really is.
If you wish, we can ask.
Again, we're trying to fix something, we should try to understand what exists today.
Joe, again, we're speaking 100% of that. Would you like for me to now speak for our come to speak to us about this?
I'm
In
curious,
addition to what you requested.
yes, about what other terms.
We'll still do that. What others have done. Can we consider how oversight might work? That might be second step, but I'll capture an action. The request. And are you asking for HR to tell us the process and what happened in that situation from their perspective, or just the
I
process?
think I can do that, I would be shocked if any HR professional would talk about a HR matter in a public meeting, so.
Yeah, I didn't think-
That's that, I'm just interested in the process. Because we're not investigating specific set of circumstances, we're considering a charter amendment change that would affect the process, so that's just my question is to understand the process.
And maybe you extract themes from the public comment generally, because I think they're germane to the situation I think it was a key detail, right? There are themes around that, so we can refresh our memories on that. I think we covered this one for now, we have some action items. Move on to the next. So this is really around timing of council meetings. Being, I think they're started 9 on Thursdays typically, right, I think. And Alice's point, if you want to involve the citizens, they've got to be able to get there, they can't if they work. Just comments to get us started on this, and then we can narrow down what we think we're gonna do with it. I know, Stephen, you said you wanted to talk about it, what are your thoughts about this item?
The 5 p.m.
Yeah, just requiring that at least one meeting, I don't know your work schedule, but maybe it's monthly, we can decide that, but. think that's what was requested monthly, having at least one.
Is there any, there's no constraint currently on city council to when they can hold their meetings for.
Public hearings.
Yeah, there are constraints on public hearing and when they have to be.
Right, but they could hold a city council meeting at 3 in the afternoon, 5.
To answer your question. Are there constraints? They could hold them at 3, yes, 3, 4, 5. Unless there's something in the statute. Or a specific type of.
My instinct is. Just like we didn't like council trying to tell us when to meet, we shouldn't. And if they wanna hold it at 5, they could, if they feel like that's required, or advisable, they could hold it at 5. I don't think we should put it in the charter.
Any counterpoints to that?
Don't they have to do land use hearings in the evening?
Yes. They have to hold one of the 2 land use meetings in the evening. Under state statute.
I think Allison mentioned that.
Well, she said it was for the land use attorneys, but it's actually not for the land use attorneys who do not enjoy night meetings. It's actually under state statute, yes, that one is during the night and the other one can be.
Probably for this reason.
Oh, there
I
it
was
is.
saying about it. Yeah.
I do know there are other municipalities that have struggled with this issue. And shows on this in terms of, it's in Sarasota County or, Fort Myers area that. They were having complaints in other cities that. The city council meetings do not be available to work. So it is an issue. Larger than just.
As a small, I try not to inject myself, but when it comes to public comment, at least at the county. You can just zoom in and do it virtually and. You have your 3 minutes, that part is easy to do without disrupting your day, but I don't know about more participation.
I think they do that here.
Well, that was kind of my question, because if the point is to have access to city council. Or is the point to be able to participate on TV during public comment and be televised?
Is public comment restricted at the evening meeting to land use, or can someone?
It is. It is.
The evening meetings are for public hearings on specific items, so the public comment deals with those items.
I fully support finding ways to allow people to be more engaged with their city council members and more engaged with government. I feel that over the past 15 years, especially since the pandemic, the ways that people have been able to participate has expanded exponentially. Now, I do realize that a lot of that is through technology, and technology isn't always equally distributed. So that kind of weighs on my head on this, but I don't think that it's in necessarily as easy as saying, okay. I think the thing was they're already doing one at night, flip that, well, they already do a land use meeting during the day and a land use meeting at night, they do their land use items on their general meeting. The second readings, but the same thing they do during the day and during the night. So you can't take away your land use meeting because it's required, so it'd be adding another meeting. And without understanding what the cost of that is, and I do also, I've given this a lot of time. I do understand that a lot of the people who go to the night meetings and talk to city council are people who are not paid overtime. They are people who are just, you have to be where you have to be. So I don't know what the cost is, but it's not just those people, it's all the IT people that have to be there, it's the cable TV people that have to be there. And even if it's just your managerial people who are not paid overtime, who would have to attend this new night meeting, there are other people who are not managerial level that provide a lot of the facts and information that also kind of feed into having to be at those meetings, even if they're not the ones who get up and talk. And so I think that to say that there was no cost, which was what was indicated, I'm not sure that that sounds factually accurate to me, and I would like more information on that if anyone wants to talk about this further. I tend to agree with Ron that while I am certainly not against having night meetings to allow different people to have access, because frankly, some people have a lot more flexibility during the day because they have more flexible schedules, and as soon as the children get home, you're paying $20 to $25 an hour to not be at home. That's a personal issue for me right now that I feel very deeply. So it can flip. I'm not against it by any means, but I think that there's a lot more to it, and I would prefer it not to be mandated by a charter when we don't know what resources the government's gonna have. And I felt this way a month ago. I feel even more strongly that we don't know what resources we're gonna have. And I would prefer it to be left in the hands of city council, and if city council says, we've looked at the numbers and we feel this is where the resources need to go. To make it equitable for people to participate, then I'm for that. But I feel that there's a lot of ways for people to participate and have access to their city council members, even if they can't always be there at 9 o'clock to be on TV for public comment.
Do you have to be in the room to have a comment during public comment? Comment from your desk.
My understanding is that they no longer allow Zoom public comments, I'm getting yeses and no.
Yeah, you can do an online public comment.
Online, but not a Zoom, not a.
No, it is Zoom.
In the county, it's just a voice.
Not the county, I'm talking about the city.
No, I'm just getting you across.
Yes, the short answer is yes, they can Zoom midnight.
There are limitations on it that you have to sign up 24 hours in advance. I think for logistical reasons, you know, whereas if you're in person, you have to sign up before it starts.
Use their own app, which is kind of annoying. It's not Zoom technically, it's this other go-to whatever
Yeah, it's very clunky.
thing.
As someone that does go to city council,
Yes.
I would say it's not all about public comment, it's about having a presence as well. Because everybody is not coming to the meeting to say something, they're coming to be a supporter of somebody that's up there speaking. But it seems like sometimes if somebody's going up there to speak and they're the only one there, that they're the only one that feels that way. But if you put it during a time where I can make concessions to, you know, make sure my kid has a babysitter or whatever, and I'm not at work, then I can come up there and be a supporter of you. Yes, some people do go up there just for TV and all that stuff, but there are some issues that some people would like to come and support the person that's up there speaking, but they can't, they have to go to work. No, I'm just gonna call off or whatever. But everybody that comes in there to support does not be, that's definitely, everybody's not there for TV.
I was thinking of that too, actually, I mean, you can't be a room full of people in red shirts. You know, if everybody in the red shirt supports this issue, and you got a room full of red shirts, and you can't get that through a remote meeting, you know.
Yeah,
There's that political part of it too, participation.
yeah, so even the red shirt thing, and then everybody has to put a button or something, they do that to show numbers and the community doesn't care about this. But sometimes there are issues that come up. And you know, somebody come up there and complain about a rock on the sidewalk or whatever like that, and it's the same person coming, and they don't realize the whole subdivision cares about this rock. So it would show if they're able to attend.
Are there current regular meetings in the evening or no? Right, there's not. So. To your point earlier about cost, I mean, doing a regular evening meeting past 5 p.m., are there overtime implications for city employees, or like how deep does that revenue go?
There are, and what I was saying is, there are overtime implications. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Because some of the people don't get paid overtime. Like, I never got paid overtime. I was here till 1 in the morning, I was back at 8 in the morning. You know,
Would it be that crazy of an ask to get a ballpark on what that could cost, or what the implications of an evening regular meeting would be? If someone at the city, maybe the clerk's office or some other office could say, if there was an evening regular meeting, we'd have to have boom, 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 and here's the salaries and this is what it would cost. Is that possible?
It's on the
They haven't seen it all the time.
depends on the agenda then.
Right,
yeah, you're never gonna get a set one, like you said,
Right,
because a lot of it depends on. I mean, sometimes the water team. And I'm not trying to pick on the water team, I just, when they come, they never come alone, you know what I mean? So that was probably just an inside joke, but they always seem to bring a lot of people because it's a very complicated issues that they're talking about, is I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm getting myself in trouble for absolutely inappropriate. Whereas if you know, some items are very, you know, some items just the chief of staff talks to. So it is going to change, could they give an estimate, you know, probably. Like I mean, I'm not opposed to ever getting more information, and I'm certainly not opposed to. The city having night meetings and some night meetings and some day meetings and making it for all the different people having access, I'm comfortable needing things to have a cost amount in the charter, which then provides no flexibility in times of economic crisis. And that sounds like super dramatic, but I mean, if you've been a government employee and you've lived through one of those, when they're literally cutting. It's talking about like you're not getting paid, or you know, you have to take mandatory days off, and so like there is no like push for like a night meeting. There's no critical parts, there's no.
But they do have night meetings, yes.
Yeah, they do for not for regular meetings, but they do, there is definitely the ability to have night meetings. I just think city council should have the flexibility to look at their numbers and say, yes. This is something that we can do.
Right.
Versus us saying you have to do it, find the money, when we may, every local government in the state by next year. Maybe everything having a cost, everything, all services other than enterprise funds. And public safety may now be permit based.
Another option is what we did with Bobby's suggestion, streamline the charter, is just to provide it as a recommendation to council to consider. As opposed to a charter change, and explain why we're presenting that. That would be another alternative that's kind of the middle ground. And it allows them to hear that you believe it's important enough for them to consider, they can decide. And maybe talk to their voters more about, and their residents more about whether or not that resonates. How do we feel about that concept?
I like that.
But aren't they?
I think we should strongly encourage them to figure, but they also need to modernize the technology linkage that they have. I mean, I know when I went to the school board and one time, I think I presented to the city council, I came in with the change.org, so I didn't have anybody in the room, but I had a petition that had 10,000 signatures, it was all verifiable, so it's like, there's ways that you can do both of these things. I don't wanna overly prescribe somebody, they have to have these meetings, but I think strongly encourage more viable, easy, adaptive, integrative, you know, I think the technology, I mean, if it's any basis of how we're using it, I think it's very antiquated, not user friendly.
I'm gonna say something wrong, and I wanna get a poll if we think we should just position, let's get the wording right later around the recommendation that council consider it versus a charter change, right?
I feel like city council today could hold a meeting tonight if they wanted to, and I presume that they're aware of the public comment that there should be meetings at night. And so I do feel like us suggesting to them that they put in the charter, that they hold meetings at night when they've chosen already not to hold a meeting at night. Is somewhat of a retail, just seems to me that they're in tune with their constituents and they know what their constituents think, there may be good reasons why they would stay too. So my instinct is not to suggest a change.
The charter. Okay, there's show of hands in support of making a recommendation that they consider this, we can lay out some of the reasons you've expressed tonight. How many wish to make a recommendation to the council to consider holding night meetings for some of the reasons stated today? Different than a charter change, in line with what you suggested, and we documented around consider streamlining the charter language in an off year, same thing, right? It's not in the charter, it's a suggestion to council. Do we support that view? Show of hands, recommendation. Okay.
There's also all these talking games into the traffic, I don't, it just gives me anxiety, I don't know.
We'll just also caution us to be careful not to go beyond our charter, or just make recommendations to the charter. And we could take that, we can make suggestions then pretty far.
What about parking? Do we have any
It is
changes?
advisory, so probably holds as much weight as they can take that and decide. We want to make a charter change, if they wanted to too. Those are the two on policy comment.
If we voted on that, was there a motion and a second?
We can do a formal motion, sometimes we do votes and I add to the minutes, you agree that way. You want to do a motion? Right, let's do a motion.
Entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the city council about evening meetings.
So.
Okay, anybody second?
Second.
It's been moved and it's been seconded. Just over discussion.
Yeah, just can we restate the motion specifically, like we're asking them. My concern is it makes it sound like we're asking them to do more. We've already decided it's still a part-time job, so are we saying to discuss certain items in the evening or?
We decided it's still.
Well, I'm sorry, it was a previous part of the discussion previously,
I
wasn't it?
thought we decided it was a full-time job and never be a part.
So then are we asking for more meetings or are we asking them?
No, not more.
Instead of scheduling some of their current meetings at night.
Yeah, kind of hand that over to-
You stated the motion about.
Yeah, so if I'm gonna hand it over to you, hopefully make everybody happy. I move to request that city council consider all the various means by which public participation may be increased, including but not limited to evening meetings and or more frequent meetings.
Can I ask a clarifying question? If every evening is land use on Thursday? No, it's not.
It's not every Thursday, right?
It's not every Thursday, it used to be every other Thursday and I'm very.
I understand. So there's some evenings, there's no meeting at all,
Yes.
right? And so this is suggesting to add an additional regular.
Or maybe.
Once a month.
My way was easy.
And sometimes other than meetings, like our clean juice meeting.
A workshop, whatever.
Sometimes they do
Can I-
have.
that's a little
call
different.
meetings,
Can I-
sometimes they have other
Yes.
things that are public hearings that have to be at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Sometimes they have comprehensive plan meetings to hold their Thursday evenings, and sometimes I think they don't have one.
Okay. Meaning there is space
I-
for it. Right?
As far as I know, I believe that there's.
That's the main point, if you're suggesting like an extra day outside of a regular Thursday.
Yeah,
Sort of a strong ask.
Most Thursdays, there is a meeting on all Thursdays.
Okay.
And most Tuesdays, there is not a meeting, but sometimes they like to schedule special meetings on Tuesdays.
Sounds like they could also choose to do that every other month or at some other cadence that
Right.
makes sense. It's just not to tell them how, but tell them why we think this is important and let them decide.
Feedback from the public suggests.
This,
Yeah, that sounds a lot more.
Monthly or bi-monthly.
But there have been some good, I mean, I thought that should have been a great point about the concept of supporting things, sure. That is not a technology issue, right? So we brought up some things we can list as examples. And then let them do it for one. Just need the word motion.
And they've heard people say it at public comment plenty of times, so it's not anything new. Ever.
Reinforcing the
Yeah.
message. Get that.
So that is also great, to enforcing that.
Yeah.
Like this group. It's not anything. So where do we stand on said motion?
I made a motion. I think he withdrew his original motion, and stated something, so.
Can we see the
What I-
language
just-
before we vote on something?
Yeah, restate it.
So,
Sorry, that's come on now, alright, let me give it another shot.
Come on, Bob, you got this.
Alright. I move to formally request that city council consider all available options by which they may increase public participation in their meetings to include evening sessions and or multiple meeting dates. Period, end.
Wondering periodic should we? Sort of mention it.
that's. Pursuant to Robert's rules of order, we got a minute, there a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay,
Or is it my for the branch?
discussion,
No, you know.
discussion. I have a question. Can public comment just be added onto a meeting that's been evening? No.
Just meetings are a way to focus for it and focus.
Okay.
They're long enough, I mean, some of these land use meetings go to 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
We're discussing public comment this week, actually.
They
Yeah,
are.
but they're trying to.
So.
They're trying to wait.
So we did a second on the motion.
Yeah,
Do you wanna follow up the procedure and then we'll?
It's been moved and properly seconded, discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye, opposed say nay. Let's try again. All in favor say aye, opposed say nay. Ayes have it.
Thank you. So those are the two items I pulled out of public comment. Please look at my analysis, make sure I understand anything. Make sure we give public comment its due attention. Secondarily, moving on to this. It's a fairly short list, so I thought maybe first we can ask if anyone has other topics. These are the things all of you have asked for us to revisit and specifically discuss. Some are broader than others, so one is just a general question around how residents can be better served by the charter. Kathleen was entered in hers to say having the charter be changed to include long range zoning and planning. We can amend the words, but the concept. How can we require early voting? These are the three. There was another one that dealt with matter we already covered and made decisions on, so I left off, and you'll see that in that discussion document that I've shared with you. Before we talk to these, I'd like to ask the group, so we get a sense of the entirety of what this entails. Are there other questions or items we wish to cover in the same manner as these items that are not listed here? Ashley,
Project deadlines. I went to speak to the city employee.
hold on just a second, so I want to make sure I heard that.
Okay.
So are you not referring to the subject we spent this real amount of time talking around? Requiring timeframes and deadlines, we discussed that before, this is different than that.
Why?
I'm asking, because I think we discussed and made decision, I can find it, but we discussed. If you remember, there was a request around if you have a project, you need to say when it's going to be done. I think we discussed that completely already, I can go back to that.
Yes, we discussed it and then, I remember, and I said, I'm gonna bring that back up, we said, okay, so, is it time yet?
we had Allison speak.
Right,
Yes, you talked about it. I can go back and look at our notes real quick if that's helpful. I
right.
just don't know, what is it that
The
we,
thing was, when I spoke to this city employee that is no longer a city employee, so she can't come and speak because she has to wait 2 years or something like that. She said that something could be put in the charter to try to help with the moving along of these projects.
okay,
I have to come back to her with the conference, but we're at the end of a meeting. And she couldn't talk much longer, but we were supposed to have lunch, we haven't had lunch yet, but there is some things that could possibly be done and that could be put in the charter, it's not necessarily ordinances. But something could be put in the charter to make sure that projects are moved along efficiently or whatever. I know the map was suggested to us by Ms. Marley, but that's not something that actually, I guess, is a great tracker for these projects that we're talking. It doesn't bring up all the projects, and I guess it requires a certain type of budget for it to be put on that map that she had, the CID or the CIP map. That was put as a suggestion that we go check that out, but when I suggested that, she's like, no, that's not it. So I just have to get some clarification on issues, but she can't even speak to us, because she's not, been out.
Have your lunch and then.
Yeah,
that's what I was wondering, do you wanna do that and, cause you know where we already landed, maybe there's something new you can bring in, because I think the group may decide that we close that issue. Doesn't mean we can't bring it up, we'll have to ask the group if they wanna entertain it, do you wanna speak to her some more about that?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't we, go ahead, Steven.
I have a similar.
Yeah, go ahead.
At a previous meeting, I had asked to revisit the conversation about the city attorney and just that we discuss a very specific change that I don't believe was discussed previously.
If I miss it, please.
No, it's okay, it was easy to merge with the other stuff, but then that was to require that determination of the city attorney to be received concurrence by city council, which is how the city clerk is governed in the charter right now.
Make it independent role, correct?
Not an independent role,
Not, okay.
but just to use the same language that is in the charter describing how the city clerk is to be dismissed, which requires council.
Or dismissal, that wasn't correct, I apologize.
No, it's okay, it was,
But the city clerk is independent, correct?
I don't know, it depends on what you mean by independent, I think that that's something that is in there that provides additional deference on the part of council, knowing that they often have a say in the termination of that person, and that they can't unilaterally be terminated by the mayor, it creates a perception of independence. So to your point, perhaps yes, but I think that the city clerk position is important, and just as important as the city attorney, and they should both have that protection, if you want to call it that.
But then can the mayor by the councils, general council?
I believe the mayor, I don't know the answer to that.
No,
Not under the current charter.
The city council will carry. No, I don't believe so. But I would be willing to even open up that again to have that conversation. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because most of the questions from council were about the city attorney, so. I felt the need to really dig deep to see if there's anything even small that can create that additional deference that council seems to be wishing to have.
Can I make a comment?
If it's for a new list, I'm gonna try to get a list together, so I added that here, Stephen, I added. Brian, actually, just to know that I got more and come back.
Yeah.
Probably doing more of the list that we don't have already.
No.
If I don't worry about a whole yet on each of these. What other topics got the meters?
I just was gonna say on the zoning, I mean, for me, it's like, I don't know if the charter is the right location for it, that's what my question is, looking at what we have in zoning in there, I don't have the ability to do the research, so.
The city's rewriting its land development code right now, and that's where a lot of those issues will hopefully be addressed.
The several current city council and prior city councils have raised this.
I'll get you the website. All Tampa forward, I think, in the initiative.
Well, so when we get to that, we could just put it in the outlet and decide that maybe it is or isn't, but at least calculate how that answer. Any other new topics?
Yes.
Any other new topics you wish to have the group discuss as unique from what we talked about already?
What's the require early voting, I don't call that one.
That came from someone on the team, I'm trying to remember who it was, from Steve.
It's required, early voting is required by state and federal law. And so the supervisor of relations just does it for the city, but it's not actually required anywhere. I think it should be just consistent from state, federal.
Say it again, so you said state and federal require it,
Elections, state and federal elections required.
and then in the city we do, but we don't, what haven't, can you say?
The supervisor of elections still does it, but it's not actually required of them, and especially, I mean. I don't even get into it now, but that's specific.
So not requiring the charter.
I can help that.
Like it.
The state law gives the option for cities to use early voting. The city has chosen to have early voting. It's not a charter requirement that they have to do it. It's it's not. Okay, sir.
And I looked at the statute today and. In fact, I don't know why I put you on the spot when I have to pull that week down, so we can do that to me. So, okay, where I have it up. But when I looked at it, I can tell, it seemed to me to say that. If the city council wants to do it. They may have to pay for it.
Correct.
And it seemed kind of vague, like they may or may not have to pay for it depending on if the supervisor of election made it, and I wasn't sure if I was reading that correctly. And so, number one, I wanted to see if you felt I was reading it correctly. I know you are an elections expert, but that doesn't mean you okay, right? I'm sorry, I think you want to talk about that.
Where that comes into play is we in the Tampa example, where Tampa's having an election on their own.
Yes,
Therefore, the supervisor is going to charge us for it.
got
If it was being held in conjunction with other elections, it's unlikely that the supervisor would charge them.
Is it the case that every time Tampa has an election, it charges independently because it's its own separate process for the whole thing?
The city is funding the election process to the supervisor election.
To give you a strong for, I mean, the point Stephen raised, is a good point, never debated, but. Cities are going to do again, and. Can we just take a strong personal move as to what we want to look into that?
What is a cat, we first make sure we don't have any more on the list and do it for all of them, would that be a good approach? Yeah, we're on the list. Any other topics not represented here or clarified here by virtue of this conversation that we want to do a quick poll on to decide whether we dig in further?
Did anybody change their mind on the residency of the city clerk?
No,
Okay.
it's not come up since we agreed to that.
It was very close, so I was wondering if I changed their mind.
Got one wrong that I don't know would be appropriate for this list, or if we discuss it maybe at the end of our meeting tonight. But there are times when it's happening right now, there's an acting head of a department, but that acting language is not in the charter. So for example, right now it's happening with the police chief left, and I was an acting
Okay.
police chief. And I guess the signal is there's no intention to officially submit that person for approval, like they're just gonna stay.
There is language about that somewhere in the charter.
In the charter, yeah, but the indication from the mayor is that that's just the person now until the next mayor comes in.
I think I don't wanna misspeak, but the charter has it sometime, I think it's a year in the charter. I think it's an introduction that is
Section,
can you recall?
yeah, section 6.03, regarding appointments. They can do interim appointments for a period of 90 days, which can be extended by the mayor for additional 90 days.
But then after those 180 days, there has to be some action. Or can someone just
I've heard of it.
back it?
I would think they can't serve in that capacity.
Right.
So,
That's sort of the, maybe an additional appointment or something along those lines.
The
You would have to
announcement,
deal with the language.
the announcement today was whoever becomes acting chief is going to be acting chief through the next election, and it'll be up to the new mayor to appoint.
But is that, for sure, but is is it less than 6 months? Yeah, it'll be in March.
The requirement to appoint is also within 90 days. So I'm trying to think if there's enough time there, but I don't want to micromanage the mayor's.
Well, I guess my question is there. In my understanding, the provision in the charter is you want to fill a vacancy, then we talked about the process for that. There would be.
That was part of the amendments that you wanted to propose, it's shifted, right now it is nominated by city council. But nominated by the mayor, appointed by the city council. You were proposing to flip that back.
Right. I think in either case, wouldn't there have to be?
What problem are you trying to
Yeah,
get
that was my
out?
question.
My interpretation of what I've read is that there's an acting police chief. And the process that I understand the charter lays out is not being followed. So it's like the mayor said, here's the acting police chief. The next mayor is gonna appoint the next one. My understanding is that there has to be a nomination or appointment.
There's a time limit on that, that's what you're saying.
There's an interim, and then within 90 days or after a 90-day extension, there has to be some process by which the council will affirm that that person is in the job.
People talking about like something that's going on, I feel like that should be like the city attorney should be planning to. Someone other than me.
Yeah, I don't know. So,
I
I think
hear what you're
your
saying.
question is a great one, and I think that the charter has language about how Lincoln appointment works, it seems pretty clear. I can't speak to whether it's always followed or not, but I think your question is good one, I think the charter does address it already.
This new person would have to go before council to be appointed.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
But there's this acting word, and I don't know if that's somehow in conflict with the processes of the charter.
Again, I'm not going to micromanage mayors.
well, we have the HR person coming, so maybe that you.
Everybody has that knowledge.
On the voting point, into what Ron was saying. So theoretically, the city could choose to not have an early voting cycle.
Right.
And so Stephen, your point was to put this in the charter so that it guarantees early voting in the city.
Well, my understanding is that it's not the city's decision if early voting isn't been offered, it's the supervisor elections, but. So,
Well,
so, right.
they come up with funding, so their decision, if they refuse to provide funding to it, then the supervisor don't want it.
But it is the city who makes the decision.
We've done many versions of early voting.
Okay, so we have some items, I think they're all here, just worded differently now and there. Anything else for the group to consider by straw poll, whether we dive in or not? Anything new? We'll still have time after we wrap everything up, and you know, as a majority wants to revisit anything, but these are beyond what we discussed, so. I'd like to do what Ron suggested for all of these, and it really just be a gate towards the next step, right? So I'll start at the top. Some of these are not over there, I think they're all here. So show of hands, how many wish to dive into concept by which we mirror clerk dismissal language but for the same for the city attorney? Did I get that right, Stephen? In summary, show of hands, who wishes to discuss this further? Just two. I'm gonna put the numbers here so we can kind of get to where we got, so we know what the numbers mean. Who wishes, even though Ashley, you're gonna presumably come back for more. Who wishes to revisit the project's completed on time concept, more detail from your friend. Further than what we did earlier, show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, thank you. I know we were sort of answering this question, Kathleen, but I still want to ask the group. Who wishes to revisit the extent to which the concept of community planning and zoning should be addressed in the charter? How many wish to discuss this? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay.
Just remove the zoning board.
By the way, it doesn't mean these will be long conversations, but just who continue. We talked a little bit just now about early voting. State law gives the option in cities or funded by cities. I think the state kind of gives us those options. Show of hands, how many people want to revisit. I don't know how much effect. Can we have much effect on this with our charter if this is the way it works? And I just want to make sure we understand options.
I'll have to double check the way it's worded, but the odds are we could put in a provision that requires early voting, you know, subject to override by state's law.
Understood, thank you. Show of hands, who wishes to discuss this option by which we formalize the requirement for early voting? 1, 2, 3. Just 4. One's going 12. Hand up, yeah, it's like an auction, but not really. Okay. And then we have a very broad comment, which, you know, maybe we need someone to talk more about what they're thinking, but just how do we serve residents better with the charter? I don't know what to do with that one, it's very broad. Does anyone remember who suggested this, and if they can provide a little bit more detail now, we can vote on it.
Isn't that pervasive in everything we're talking?
That's why I'm asking, but I know someone said it and I wrote it down, I'm just.
Well, yeah, I probably raised it early on, and I believe in that, I don't think people even know what the charter is, so I don't think they even know how to interact it until it limits them from an action, you know, so it's sort of like. And I don't know if that's, you know, I sort of tend to be big picture, but it would be nice if there was, and I don't think we should, you know, put these things in the charter necessarily, but I wish there were advocates for regular engagement so that you're educating the public on how this can get better, which I think doing something every 12 years, doing something a little bit bigger would allow to that, and having some research that could come out so you could do some pulse polling with the public to say, I mean, there's a lot of frustration out there on issues that are in the charter where people don't understand that linkage. And, you know.
So I agree, and tonight we talked about evening meetings, so more people could participate. I think the next charter review should be in council chambers. It's an evening meeting, there'd probably be more public participation. So I agree.
In our next meeting or the.
No, the next charter review.
I'll give
I
you.
think people are kind of going up and giving their opinions.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are frustrated, but they don't know how to change it, you know, so it's sort of like, I don't know.
The education and definitely some infographics or something, pass them out, I don't think people understand. I was struggling first started, I'm like, okay, what is this? Trying to read through it, so.
So not so much a charter change, right, more captured by virtue of some of the other things, and even by the recommendation we make. To council, consider ways to do things, okay, so we won't need to vote on this. So we've got these, we have 2 files. We can figure those out, you tell me, but I'm kind of feeling like. Maybe we adjourn and we start these next time, I'm okay to jump in, you guys, how are you feeling? I mean, we're in good shape, we probably can cover these.
We got 30 minutes, I think we can, I think we should try to keep,
Keep going.
I think we can.
no, plan on being here till 9 if you have stuff to talk about, let's talk about.
I agree. Keep
I
going.
think we have to come
Good with
back
it.
for.
We're already here.
I think progress,
But don't we need to get some research done on these things or no? I mean, it's too.
so this one we really discussed a lot, but actually maybe bringing some new information, so that was off the table. Which what really leaves us is the southern conversation, so we can just go down to that one and have a conversation about that.
So, can I ask you a question? You are the one who brought this up, and zoning is like. So much of what local government does, particularly when you drill down to city council, it's so much of what they do. And
But they don't feel prepared to do what they're doing because they're
talking about that.
They're not into projects that they're brought to them, but they're not thinking about it in terms of. The structure of the city.
They set up the structure of the city. I'm so I'm not arguing with you. I am just like floored after I've done this for 20 whatever years. That city council members are saying that they don't understand how the long-term vision of the city works when they set the long-term vision, and I want to help them. I do, but I need to understand more, and you guys are all like, absolutely, Becca. So explain to me what is happening. They set the vision.
I think you're asking members of the public who get elected to make decisions that are extremely complicated.
Yes.
And you can't expect most people to understand these things.
Not right outside.
I work in real estate, I barely understand it. You're a real estate attorney,
I'm
And
a
you-
state attorney.
what about land use?
I'm a land use attorney.
See?
Get the note.
But I think-
Like, this is a conversation every time we meet with the judges, they're like, I get it, I get land uses, anyway.
I've always thought that some sort of educational platform for elected officials regarding land use would be a really, really interesting idea. I don't know if it's through the charter or having to do that.
Yeah, I know.
But you watch some of those meetings and I'll speak for myself, I'm frustrated a lot of times at some things that are either miscommunicated or ignored, almost miscommunicated from the applicant to the council, or maybe miscommunicated is probably the wrong word. I think they're actually communicated effectively. But whether the communication is choosing to be ignored or it's, again, there's no education platform, so they're hearing one thing but not understanding practical effects. Again, there's a lot there, but my point is some sort of educational platform on land use.
So. Terrific idea. City council members. Have historically, I don't know if you're doing now, have this. Historically, thank you, we got it. Retired. They're not just sent to meetings with no one explaining to them the basics of land use. And man, if I could get their attention for workshops. Where after they've been doing it for 4 months after it's explained to them and then they do it and it's so much, you're right, it's like a foreign language. And then after 4 months, they really need to have it again. But you know, city council has not always been receptive to like, hey, you've been doing this for 4 months, let me explain to you what you're doing. I mean,
Well,
it's
they're
certainly been
not
tried.
doing that today. I mean, my whole thing is like, I don't feel like in just the conversations, I'm not a real estate person, but I read the papers, I talk to a lot of things. There's not a master plan, like do neighborhoods that, you know, that Ashley's advocated for, is there a plan to say? There's gonna be this pool, this school, this zoning, high density, low density.
I found it was, you've got a former land use attorney for the city and former planning director of the city, so they can give you a lot. The state requires that every local government have a comprehensive plan, and
Right.
that's what the planning commission, what they were, that. So that kind of level exists and is required by state law.
And how much public input is put into that?
A lot, yeah, it's quite, that's why the planning commission exists, to be able to create that comprehensive plan and go out in the public. And there were people that amended the comprehensive plan here in Tampa, and it was quite a number as well.
Then you couldn't even find a seat.
Right.
Right.
Good process.
And
Yeah, I went to 3 of those public hearings. But there still was like, in talking to the city council members there, they were like, this is way over our head, this is like, so, I don't know if it's a master. I don't know what the structure is, but I don't think the current structure is working.
so, yeah,
Can I, Stephen, talk us, because he's had a stand up.
Yeah.
No, I mean. A lot of it is dictated by state law and by previous court decisions.
Right.
It doesn't, however, I am of the opinion that I think there's a lot in the charter that is simply clarifying legislative intent. That the city can't actually control it, but it's there because when you read the charter, in theory, you're supposed to understand how the government functions, and I was always a little bit disappointed that the charter at least didn't point and say it's their job to make quasi judicial decisions. It doesn't even do that. And I mean, that's referenced in the Liberty case finding, like, well, the charter doesn't give city council that authority, so how can they make that decision? And it's like this logic loop, you know, so. I don't know how to solve that issue, but I mean, you could start by putting it in the charter that they're supposed to hear this stuff. Even though it's restating what's already required.
but I'd like to go to state law and completely rewrite it. And start from the beginning on planning, like, I don't disagree with you, we have this comprehensive plan and no one knows what it says. And that literally is what drives every land use decision they make. And then you hear people complaining, the land use decisions don't have any planning, but trying to get people to pay attention, I'm gonna cry, I'm not really, but like. I'm not really gonna cry, but trying to get people to pay attention to the comprehensive plan is like a life goal, like pay attention to it. That is what guides everything. You want to spend time on something that's important and what's driving your city. Focus on that, look at that, rewrite it. They have the ability to do that. And people saying it's too hard, that's literally the main thing they're elected to do. It's not the only thing. But it's a big part of it, and you think it's too hard, that you need to spend a lot more time figuring it out. And I don't know that we can mandate that in the charter, and I'm sorry, that's my soapbox. But do I agree that that's hugely, the reason I voted for 5 isn't because I think it should be in the charter, but I think it's important that people understand. That's everything, and when people are like, there's no plan for the city. There's a huge plan, there's a whole other commission that's separate under a state law, there's a planning department within the city, there's a second planning department in the city.
Then the charter doesn't say any of that.
But
I think that's where I'm going.
I want Bobby to know.
The charter doesn't credential any of that.
It doesn't even say who to call or like whose responsibility.
So could be, but the bricks that I need help
I didn't want to
building.
talk with it, there's the amount of.
How do we get this? Where's the connection to the charter? That's where I'm having a hard time.
my question,
Something
maybe
make that connection.
when it changed, like, okay, first of all, philosophically, do I think we should repeat things in the charter that are in state law? I do not. I hear, Stephen, that you do, and I understand it because you want a document that people can pick up and understand. I think that you have your charter that governs and you can cross-reference state law, but state law in the development area, even more than elections, changes a lot. And our charter is gonna be, we're gonna be like skipping along behind the legislature every session, trying to make us match what is in state law. So I'd like a document that everyone can pick up and understand.
Not 400 pages long.
That's not 400 pages long, that doesn't need to change every single time the state law changes, and I just feel that in this particular area, the state has lot of opinions, and they change so often that putting it in the charter feels like chasing a tail that I already feel like we're chasing just to keep up with doing what they're telling us to do.
Why do we take out that zoning board, you know, that should probably be reestablished, even
Okay.
if it wasn't the final say, if it was just.
Sure,
Yeah,
you know what makes me
and
that.
to add to
Yes.
that, just quickly, at the land development code advisory team meetings, that was brought up. And
So
and there was,
let's-
there was consensus with even some of the most outspoken individuals on that board
I
that,
love this so much.
yeah,
So like 20 years ago, they tried to do this, and both Dan and the land use bar, most of which have retired or died at this point,
agreed.
were adamant that you had to have 2 city council meetings. But not much, very few people have 2 city council meetings. You have a city council meeting, and then you have no one show up, and the second one, you have everyone show up. You have 2 meetings before the same board. A zoning hearing master is brilliant, and I would support having that in the charter. I would support asking, I don't know, Julie Mandel, who handled it last time in the city, is now the county attorney, come here and talk to us and explain how the county does the zoning hearing.
I agree with that.
Me too.
I would support leaving that in the charter.
But I have a question, so just to clarify, so the assignment of quasi judicial powers, you don't think should be mentioned in the charter?
I would defer, well, I don't say defer.
And I ask that because it conflicts with the separation that's already in.
I can't agree
I
with
can't
that.
provide that opinion.
I can't agree with that. But I will,
I know, no, I know.
yeah, and I was like, I'm not sure what that's labeled. So. But whether or not that needs to be put in the charter, I would expect that the city attorney, if they felt that that was important to have in there. They would let us know, and they haven't. And before we put anything in there like that, I would like their opinion on how that is going to affect everything. That's like a very thing that I would not want to do without having their legal advice on that. But if people want to put it, zoning hearing master in the charter.
What would that even, can someone explain what that?
Okay, so you have to have, under state law, you have to have. Like 2 hearings. A lot of local governments have a zoning board, or the county has a zoning hearing master, which is a professional who hears it. Really fast, because we're getting time. Zoning isn't an opinion, you don't take a vote as a community, you take that vote when you're doing your comprehensive plan, which is legislative. That is the will of the people, stepping back to property rights and Burr-J. Harris in the state of Florida, which limits what you can do, but other than that. So, but when you get down to zoning, it is what are the facts and what are expert opinions, and nothing else is legally relevant. And so the county has a hearing officer who makes findings of facts, lists the experts' opinions, and then draws a professional conclusion, which then is given to your elected officials. At the city, you have the elected officials who did tell me they didn't feel confident to do that, but I'm telling some people they don't feel confident making these decisions twice. Without a zoning board or
That no person.
Versus some agreeing,
But they get-
so how does that differ than,
Well,
so the city staff reviews applications for.
they are experts. And they are giving their expert opinion, they're making the record. Okay, so it's like that's where you get your quasi judicial, you're not in a court. Ken's like, stop it, stop. So they are offering their expert opinion to city council.
City staff, you can refer.
City staff is making
When they say,
their expert opinion,
"Define
the
it,
planning
define it,
commission is
define it,
offering their
define it."
expert staff. An expert planner, an expert transportation person, they can offer their opinion. Lay people, who is everyone who is not an expert, can offer factual testimony, such as I see 72 cars on this street. or I don't have water when I turn on the tap. Things like that. And then you take your facts and you take your expert opinion, and then you take your laws and you see where they fit in there. And you can either have your elected officials making that decision twice, or you can have a zoning board made up of professionals, or a zoning hearing master who is professional. Give a recommendation. So it's filtered through a professional.
So the public would still get to show up.
Oh, yes.
Provide their input to city council, and city council could ultimately decide either way. But the big point of contention was who appoints that person. And the consensus was sort of, it needs to be someone appointed by the city council. Because the city council is sort of the closest voice of the people. And if that zoning hearing master was appointed by the city council, there would be a little bit more control over that process. That's what was said at that meeting.
I mean, and again, if it's already being taken care of to the land development code provisions, I don't know that it needs to be a charter.
It's not, it was
I just,
talked about
it's
at
an
that
interesting
meeting.
point, it's something I've always personally thought was a great idea, but that's me and maybe that's not the place for the charter. I'll let you
Took your recommendation, right?
Just a couple of points and observations. Number one, I don't think we're going to be able to conclude this discussion tonight because it's important and it's complicated and it's late. But we're also dealing with related but different issues. If you're saying, Jared, that members of the city council sometimes don't know what they are or have a full understanding of whatever project or whatever is going into it. You know, I agree, they're lay people and not expert on all these things, that's one issue. In terms of staying within the comprehensive plan, although that is, you know, in black and white, I think it is referred to so often that whether you're on the city council or you're a member of the public, can't always connect what the city plan is to the particular development project that is being discussed. Certainly the public doesn't have a complete understanding of that. So therefore, a lot of these discussions that I see are defaulting into political opinions in terms of development or not development, and not always on the merits or the law that is applicable. So you know, so there are those different points, whether, you know, the city council members are, you know, are able on a continual basis to understand the project and how the comprehensive plan relates to it, and whether the public understands that as they go along the way. So if there are changes to be made, I think that we should consider, we should talk about it more. But I think there are a number of related, unrelated issues.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I agree with Rebecca that it's an idea that is very much so worth considering for a multitude of reasons that we barely even typically ask for just now. But I think that we would need to talk with the techniques about what exactly proposed. Because there's just more to it. Are there still 2 hearings? Does council see it twice or just once now? Like, you know, how does all of that work? And I think that's where you know, we might be able to come up with something that frankly I think would be better than the LDC process would.
Totally agree, and I'm not sure that what I described is even gonna come out of the LDC. It was talked about. But everything I've seen with draft doesn't point to the city creating this position, so I don't think it's gonna come out of the LDC. I think if it came out of anywhere, it would be here.
Okay, well, somebody recommended somebody to come speak to us.
It's good with our fingers.
I do that out.
That's all, I think you take it.
But
Well, wait into the night.
Should we revisit? I mean, we got rid of that zoning hearing piece of the charter, so
That was like a. I'm not sure that that's revisiting, like reviving that, I think it's a completely new
Sure.
thing that wasn't done before.
Yeah, so one suggestion would be, I would honestly, I think it's. It would be difficult for this group to rewrite the zoning process. And I am sure Ken is up to any challenge we set him to, but my instinct is that if we write pages of zoning. Procedure. The city attorney and the city council attorney, the city council are gonna have to go through all of that again. Maybe what we do is come up with the ideas that we want to happen and we pass something that says we recommend the city write a charter amendment that accomplishes these things. Us trying. So things, Ken, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
It really just depends on how in depth you want to get in the charter. You could adopt a process where the city is required to have a zoning hearing officer or a planning board, something at a level, and then shall then institute that process by ordinance. So that language is used a lot in the charter. It's, if you're getting into the high level details of how it operates and all that, that's usually not the kind of thing you would put in a charter. Because it's going to change quite often. But if you want to keep it to a high level, it could either be a recommendation or it could be a proposal.
Can we see what other cities are doing in this space? Because I mean, I don't wanna over prescribe it, but I do think it's almost like asking them. I think some of them have expressed that they need some additional help on this, so sort of asking them to help themselves publicly with that, we could give them some guidance, and maybe we have to reaffirm that with our conversations with them. Give them some pathways and Rebecca, you need to launch your passion at 8:30 at night with it, like. It's like, this is defining what Tampa's gonna grow to be, and I don't wanna over prescribe it in the charter, but I do think if there's a way to maybe set some. Signaling that would be a little bit more directional and help them help themselves. Maybe that's possible, I don't know.
Let me make sure I'm understanding it, the group's direction. Did you want to see other charter provisions dealing with zoning?
Yes. But
Support that.
yeah,
That, okay,
If it's possible to. Upload those into, rather than wait till the next meeting and just present it. And if you could do to have it in advance so we can digest it, make it be more efficient, that would be.
yeah, and discuss with other people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
We didn't do.
That's the action item for this topic is trying to go do that research and share in advance.
Well,
What do you find for zoning language?
yeah, just, can we define sort of where we wanna go with this as a group, because I'm just. Afraid that this could be. 8 3-hour meetings of, and it's an important issue, but I'm not sure yet where we're trying, what we're trying to figure out.
well, wouldn't we keep it high level? It would eventually be voted on, and then those specifics would be worked out with the city and the public. Right, we wouldn't be the ones describing every little detail, we would just say, the city of Tampa is required to have whatever this position is. And then the city would facilitate that with the public, I would assume that's.
So to respond to Yvonne, there's a lot of different things that people do as far as like comprehensive plan amendments and et cetera, et cetera. I'm only interested in like the zoning hearing master or something similar. And I really doubt there's a lot of charters that do that. I think local governments probably don't do it in their charter, but I don't know. But I'm certainly interested in finding out, but I'm not interested in.
The scope of what we're doing
Yeah.
is evaluating the zoning hearing master process.
For some of
That was my
Yes.
We had a zoning board in the charter we just removed. Instead, should we bring that back up and research what that was?
Well, it's
And
not-
see,
I don't need to remove the board, we remove the person who's gonna be insufficient.
Well, both, because neither one exists.
But it doesn't, the language that we remove just speaks to who's gonna be the
The person,
It
right?
doesn't create or not create the board, it references it,
I
but
think the board is
That
ready
was
to take that up.
So the board existed, my aunt actually dropped off a big box of old newspaper clippings and stuff, and there's an article in it, I should bring it, you guys might find it interesting, it's from 1960 by.
Bobby would.
I would love to see that, maybe something exciting.
My great father was given a like outstanding citizen award because he didn't miss a meeting in 19 years, he was on it since I think 1944 to 1960 or something. So it did exist.
That's usually like a variance board.
What
A
is that?
judgment board is it like a variance board, this is different.
I don't know, yeah, I don't know, my point was just see what that exactly was, and if there's already some sort of old materials.
Yeah.
In process, I don't know. You might be right though, it's probably, it sounds like a variance board.
I'm always happy to get one.
So I think the item is to really explore and or eventually vote on the idea of a position being created at a high level, with high level language in the chart.
and a process for a zoning hearing, right, that's what we're talking about. Not just,
Hearing master,
but
something
but
similar
the
to.
hearing master's job would be to run a hearing.
I'm not looking for like the entire process, but like there would be a zoning hearing master and there would be one hearing before the zoning hearing master who would make a recommendation to city council.
Creating that process and
But just at that level, not the X's and O's below. So barely that level.
Yeah, I think it's probably a two-sentence provision.
Yeah.
You're pulling in that this hearing pursuant to 166, et cetera, shall be held by a zoning hearing master, the process of which shall be defined by.
And how they're appointed.
So, perfect.
But how many more?
can we have, in addition to maybe inviting, obviously Julia's participation would be voluntary part of. Can we have somebody from the city who operates that process today come and talk to us, and can we also ask council their thoughts on the process?
Let's unpack that a little. The Julia thing, I didn't get a sense that we're definitely asking, so I can ask her, but no.
Sure, what? Sorry.
To come and tell us about how the county does it.
Wasn't my suggestion, I was just reiterating.
I wanna make sure I get the action, items, that's all I'm saying.
helpful.
I think also, as Ron said, I think we should ask the city council in terms of their impression of processes.
Okay, so both items or both?
Something from our city administration, the council's thoughts on it, and it's up to, I was just reiterating what I thought.
No, I just-
said that we would, but Julia to come speak to us.
I'll ask Julia as well.
Process.
And then the next request is asking. Can we refine that? I wanna make sure I know what we're asking for, so can you phrase that for me?
I'm not sure what we're
Yeah,
asking
no,
for,
yeah.
but if we're gonna create a hearing master process. I at least would like to understand from the city administration what their thoughts are on that. From the city council, what their thoughts are on that. And if we have someone who has experience outside of running that kind of process, with their thoughts are. I'm not asking for anything.
Right, no, thank you. Are we asking? Process or establishing a role by which ordinance would define the process? I wanna revisit what you said, Ted. Just because one's kind of high level, and the others are really getting into the habit.
I don't think we're establishing the details of the process, but creating a position with no direction as to what that person would do. And I think by implication, if this group recommends that we create a position of zoning hearing master, we are recommending that there be a hearing master process.
But someone else defines that, right? That's what how it would work, I think.
Now, I mean, it would be useless for us to suggest that we just create a title and have no direction as to what that person does.
I guess I'm saying like what you said, okay, from the charter language.
The
not
charter
from-
language would create the title as well as pull in the part of state law that deals with the hearing that it's supposed to handle. The conduct of that would be set by ordinance.
Yes. So it would be establishing a process, the details of the process would be set by ordinance. I'm gonna go back on that.
I'm just trying to understand, so I
I'm not sure what we're doing, I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah.
So I don't want to prescribe anything.
Hearing from the county,
about how they do it.
That'll give us a lot.
Yeah.
I agree.
So maybe we do that and then we'll have a better understanding maybe of next steps. Is that okay?
Along with, wasn't, or we would to receive stuff from Ken on what others
Yeah.
did.
That's it. I got all those items. I don't know if Julie can attend in 2 weeks, we'll ask. We'll ask her tomorrow morning.
And we're gonna have the city and it's like a Minnesota administration who understands.
I don't know, you guys tell me it sounded like we want to do that first and that second, but I just need to.
Some trying to drive us to getting this down on time, so
When is it
we're
due?
gonna talk about this, we should get information from the city and the city council and. So next, we should do it all in one meeting.
I just need to know whom precisely, what exactly.
Or someone Abby feel like delegating.
That be the right person, Abby?
I mean, yeah, Abby can delegate someone,
Okay,
Abby feel like
Yeah.
is like head.
and we've done
And
that.
she's so she's also been like as a person herself, so she. So she felt this.
To just talk about the topic,
I heard to talk about how the city does it now.
how the city was attacked, okay?
Yeah, and I wouldn't wanna hear any thoughts they have on shit over here, it's the process. That's what we're trying to educate ourselves on.
They're supportive. They tried to.
Yeah, no, I would, I'd say
And it's been shot down, that's why coming from us might help.
again, the same of council.
To ask council to tell me how. Speak
Or,
to us.
or communicate their thoughts on shifting to a hearing master process.
Okay,
That could be Marty, or that could be,
just up to the chair, yeah.
and he didn't have to appear before us, but I needed some thoughts on. Maybe you can just talk to Ken and keep.
And their response maybe if they want.
Okay, I think I got everything, thank you for your patience. Is there any other new business before we adjourn?
Any new business? Hearing none, all right. I'm gonna adjourn this meeting, and, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. the meeting. It's been moved and properly seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Close the name. Meeting adjourned at 6:09.
Rob, please mark me as present. Thank you. The City Charter Review Committee appointed by Lynn Hurtak and City Council. I thought the movie goes on here.